You guys are not only great friends of mine, but they are fabulous realtors and you're gonna love it. So Haley and Jesse, I'm gonna technical. I'm gonna let you guys go for a minute.
Okay. Well, I'm Haley. I'm Jesse. Ron, are you?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I'm like, that's our typical intro on our YouTube channel for all the videos we do. Like, it's just so weird now because it's been a minute since we thought.
You do
video, what's
your handle with your?
Utah Realtors.
Yeah, we try to make it easy. We are the key to real estate.
Is it just the two of you?
We have a full-time assistant as well.
Okay.
Yeah, we're kind of the face of it, work with the clients directly.
Outstanding.
Us in mind.
Yeah.
Like today.
Quicker.
I think it's that one.
Face button. What questions do you have about real estate? Ah, that was it. What I do. Okay, sweet.
Okay, so we're in section 17, make and receive offers. Who here has written an offer?
Oh yeah, we should go through around the room, introduce yourself, how long you've been in the business, how many transactions.
It's a 2 months, none.
It's okay.
Three.
Chris is the weirdo that makes friends with people at gas station pumps and then gets a deal out of it like his first week, so.
And swimming pools.
That's like my favorite story, sorry.
That is-
Here, I've been, probably a month.
So,
Nice. The goal is to do it full time. Goal is to do it full time. Nice.
I'm Tammy, I just got my license.
Nice.
I'm Wes Beard. I've been in the business for almost 2 years. I was on a team and then went off the team. It's been, I guess, 2 months now. And so I'm re-educating myself, but I had about 8.
Nice. What's your favorite part?
What's my favorite part of
Yep.
it? I think seeing how I can help people achieve their goals and watching how going through the process and seeing how smoothly it can go. I think it's been a pleasure to work with people that really want, who wants it and doesn't want it.
Yeah.
And you figure that out. And so I think making it a win-win deal both for me and for them, but it's about seeing how it improves their lives and getting them what they want. I love the negotiation part of it. So,
Awesome.
Yeah.
Perfect thing.
yeah. Exactly.
Okay, has everybody heard about our belief system? The Y4C2Ts? This looks familiar.
Mhm.
Okay. I have to say, my favorite, I just change all the time, but my favorite is integrity. Do the right thing, always do the right thing. That'll save your butt in so many cases.
And mine's teamwork. Not only do I like having a team member that can help me through things, but you team up with anyone on the other side as well. You both have the same goal in mind, get both of your time for the finish line. All right.
Can I make a comment? That was
Yeah.
interesting because were you guys here this afternoon when he was talking about difficult conversations? That was one of the major things he talked about was do the right thing.
Yeah.
That at the end of the day, doing the right thing is what's going to make or break your conversations when they're very difficult. When something goes wrong in a transaction, just make sure you do the right thing.
Absolutely.
And it'll sit better with you too, knowing you
Yeah.
did the right thing. I remember when I was first in the business, I came home and I told, I had to throw in over half my commission. What the hell did you do that for? And then it turned around, they were extremely happy. They referred their parents to me and it was the biggest transaction that I'd ever done at that time. So doing the right thing, obviously I don't want to throw your commission in if you don't have to, but doing the right thing, you always feel way better about it and it'll pay you back in the long run.
What is your name? Megan. I'm Megan. I'm Jesse.
How long have you been doing
And since April,
Nice. And have you helped him?
I'm trying to help my friend right now. She's going back and forth, so.
Do we wanna check in on the people online?
Oh, yeah.
Does anybody wanna share who they are and how many transactions they've done, how long they've been in?
If you just cover.
Is it just Chris?
Oh,
I
wait.
only have 3 in there.
There's someone else in there.
Wait, is that, get bigger? Oh, yeah. Jessica,
Jessica just closed her
is there her
She's
first?
mute- She's muted.
first deal today.
Wait, she's back. There you go.
She's
Oh, no,
muted.
Maybe she's in somewhere she can't talk.
Yeah, that is true.
Okay. Chris, do you wanna share?
So, sorry, I'm,
Okay, oh, he's on the phone. He's got somebody sending with him right now. Okay. Oh. Do you wanna share?
am I on? So,
Ryan
sorry.
Muted, should be able to-
She's unmuted.
I don't see you talking though.
Anyway,
Okay,
I like to think of sales as the ability to gracefully persuade, not manipulate a person or persons into a win-win situation. Into a win-win.
that's actually, I worry a lot about putting my clients in the wrong house.
You worry about putting your signs at the wrong house?
My clients in the wrong house.
Oh, putting them in the wrong
Yeah.
house.
I just recently had a situation where my clients were hell bent on this house that was gonna need far more repairs than they were capable of doing. Wasn't accepting FHA offers and they were FHA people and they were like, oh, I'm like, the only way they move is no, we would have to cover all the repairs. That's the only way to negotiate your way into that one to make it win. And they were like, okay, and then they're trying to map everything out. And I was like, look how much discussion we're having with this. This is not the right house for you. This is not gonna work. But it sucks to tell somebody no, but I know for a fact that that would be a very miserable transaction for me and them. And they would also be in over their head. Down to it.
And I think being honest and doing the right thing is the right thing to do,
We-
because they don't know what they're getting themselves into. Like, if you've ever done a home project, it's way worse.
Yeah, and they're consistent renters, apartment people. They've never had to do a project.
That reminds me, I've got some clients right now that the husband is like all over. Just excited and the wife is just like keep everything, and we've shown them probably 13 homes, 14 homes. And none of them are right.
Ugh.
And now, and we're looking from North Ogden out west and all the way to Tremont. Because her husband wants to keep the house they live in and use that equity and buy a new house.
Gotcha.
But she feels like it's, if they're going linear across, that it doesn't make any sense for them to move. And at the end of the day, I'm starting to feel like, you know, what is the right thing here? Because honestly, I feel like that deep down, she doesn't want to move. And it's one of those things where they're like
Yeah.
this, and I keep talking to them about, you know, we just need to know which direction you want to go. And once we know which direction you two want to go when you're together, then we can make anything happen that's
Yeah, I know
feasible.
that part of our job description is marriage.
I'm telling you, if this doesn't work out. I probably,
You gotta put the home.
yeah, I'm probably like, it's weird, the things that you go through when you're dealing with couples, because they both have different visions about where their lives going.
And that's why in the beginning, it's really good to have like your buyer consultations too, and kind of learn their personalities and who's the driver and who's going to speak up if something's wrong, and just kind of learn them before you're showing them. 50 constantly.
Yeah, and we tried to narrow that down
Yeah.
and finally, this last one we showed them, I'm just like, it finally dawned on me, you know what? I don't think she really wants to move
Mm,
at the end of the day.
yeah, it's not gonna work out for her probably.
Mhm.
I feel like at the right opportunity, you could be quickly what they do and ask.
Mhm.
That's what I'm gonna have to do, because it doesn't seem right. I want them both to be happy and I don't want to divorce. That's not my goal.
Yeah.
just so I can get them into a house,
Yeah.
so they end up getting divorced.
Are you like?
I mean, but that turns into 3 transactions in the long
It
run.
does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I love, you guys know I say this out loud, those of you that don't know me. I always
my
say
first
this.
transactions were all divorce kind of
Ah.
situations, so I'm not a stranger to divorce situations. It's just, do I want to be the one that helps?
Well, I would almost just like make sure that you're double checking her objections and then comparing that to the next houses that they wanna see. And if you see an objection, say, hey, here's the problem with this other house that we saw that I'm seeing with this house too. That'll kind of save you running around time.
Yeah,
And then, yeah, that's kind of a tough one.
so, but again, back in to do the right thing, whatever's,
Yeah.
you know, what's gonna be the best in the long run. And it isn't about commission, it's about doing the right thing at the end. And then you'll be their friends and they'll refer
Yeah,
you.
that's what I was just gonna say, even if it doesn't turn into a transaction, they are still part of your
Your
sphere and you
network.
can, yep, and they can refer you too.
Oh, yeah.
We love the engagement, by the way. We do have content to cover, but if we want to talk more, I like those kinds of classes that are actually gonna help you in your business.
And generally, we go at least a half an hour over.
Anyway, Jesse and I like to talk too,
Yeah.
so we will get very distracted.
Okay.
So because you opened that, you probably just need to, there you go. Yep, and now you should be able to use your clicker again.
Which clicker is it?
It is
'Cause I
that
was
one,
using the mouse.
that the one you were using?
Oh,
Yeah, there you go.
Well, what did I do there? Whoa, that's.
Can I make this, I'm gonna make this smaller again. Yeah.
I can. Any gosh, so far.
Wait.
Well, I think I missed like half of our,
Yeah, it is.
is this where we were? Offer process?
The very first item.
Great. Okay, so you have gone through the showing process, you find a house, you want to write an offer. So they're gonna make an offer and then the seller has 3 ways to respond to you, accept, counter, or reject. And if they counter, that's when you can negotiate on terms. And if they accept the offer, you did a really good job on making your early call to the other side. And we'll go through that a little bit further in detail. And then rejecting the offer, typically you see that if there's multiple offers and they choose to go with another offer.
And we always try to learn why our offer didn't go through, so we can share that with our clients. So sometimes with clients, that'll be chronic low ballers and stuff like that. If you have the data behind you to show that, hey, people are not accepting lower offers, that will hopefully inspire them to up the ante a little bit to make people ready.
Kind of like when you talk to your spouse about advice, they keep telling you, and then someone random comes in and they're like, oh, you should do this, and you believe that person. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of that way with your clients. too. Sometimes you gotta have an outside force to help you through it.
Yep. All right, any ahas? Okay, let's share. Okay.
1 second. I have a question on the
Yeah.
previous one. When you say they reject the offer, you can have directly, hey, what happened?
Yeah.
Like too low or too high or?
So you're gonna get some agents that are like, they've rejected, like they're gonna be cold with you, or they'll actually tell you like, yeah, we went with an offer that was conventional, or an offer that could close quicker. Most agents out there are willing to help you. Especially with the market that we have just went through, for a lot of buyers discount. So, yeah.
And sometimes they'll even just let you know, like, you know what, there was an offer that fit my buyer's needs better. This is what, like, if she's gonna talk about, they're gonna talk about this in a minute. About the pre-process and how you can set yourself up for success when you're making an offer. But it never hurts to ask why you didn't get accepted. And then the other thing is, you guys, we're seeing a lot of cancellations. So if your client loves the house, it doesn't hurt to say like, hey, Gidget, we wrote an offer, talk through why it didn't get accepted. If we were willing to match those terms, would you consider putting us in the backup position?
And you should, by this point in time, have already had hopefully one conversation with the agent, maybe two, and should have built up the rapport enough to be comfortable asking.
Also, when you are, asking all of that is to the agent,
Yeah,
and then you have to consult with the owner. or the
yeah,
seller.
yeah.
You say,
Well-
you guys want to come back into the game, like you said.
Oh, yeah, in that case, yeah, yeah. Usually if they are rejecting your opportunity is done unless the current buyer that they selected canceled. If they come back to you and like, there's the option where you're not done yet unless there's a cancellation, they'll come back and counter and say, hey, we have this many offers. These are what the other ones we look like. Can you modify your offer to meet these different things? And then we would be happy to go with your offer. That's often what happens with the counter. Or we have this certain need related to this or that. Can you adjust your offer to this or that? And at that point, that's when you kind of go into the negotiation. But so it's kind of like you go through the rejection process and you ask, you kind of get a feel. If you could be backup, that's great. They'll let you know if something falls through, and then and then we start over with the negotiation.
Do you guys know what backup is?
Second option.
Yep,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
So the
it's,
seller has accepted a buyer's offer and they're moving forward with the process. However, you've got a backup buyer, just in case this one backs out. They're next in line and they don't have to go through, for the seller, they don't have to go through the showing process. They have that buyer in line.
there's a couple of misconceptions about backup offers that I come to just discover. A lot of times, I'll find that a seller's agent thinks that you becoming backup offer means that your clients are automatically willing to assume that primary offers conditions, pricing, timelines, things like that. That's not how the contract's written. That's not what a backup offer is. Backup offer is your standard, your offer that you've submitted if you haven't had any kind of back and forth negotiations or counter offers related to your offer. When you are brought in as backup, they can ask you to make changes, but you don't have to meet that previous offer. So that's one misconception. And then the second misconception is, as a backup offer, you have the right of first refusal. So basically, they come to you, they say, are you ready? Would you like to move forward? Here's kind of what we're looking for, yes or no. If you refuse, they go back on the market. It's only the opportunity to say, I don't want to move forward. It's a little bit of an interesting way that it works out, but yeah. That's my bits about backup offers. Because there's just those little misconceptions that come across. I'm like, you gotta read the contract.
You've had people that think that they're gonna, that if you're in backup offer, that you're gonna accept what the first offer.
Yes, I have had that twice.
And they didn't make the changes in the addendum, because the addendum now says specifically, like, based on these changes.
They
So-
didn't, nope. And like, if you read it, it's like, you're just backup, you're just backup. Our offer moves up into primary position and it's our offer. moves
That
up to
is some
primary
advice,
position.
like read even the fine print at the bottom, read it. Like, I ran into a situation where, and he was a seasoned agent. And he only countered one item and then it was carpet cleaning that he left and didn't address. Which means that it's still agreed upon. And so when we did our final walkthrough, we're like, hey, the carpet's coming clean. He's like, what are you talking about? We didn't want to do that. But in there, like, if it's not addressed in the next addendum, it's still,
It's happening. Yeah, it's still part of the contract.
so make sure that you're reading those addendums and not just putting in your own words too. And like Rosie said, like, we're all here to help too. You can throw it in the Facebook group, reach out to one of us. We're happy to help. You're not alone in it.
Definitely. All right, so preparing for the offer.
Ensure the property is still available. Nothing is worse than showing up to a home and then your clients fall in love. And then you go to write an offer and they're like, oh, we just accepted.
On the flip side, as a listing agent, do everybody a solid and give them a heads up if you're accepting offers by a certain point of time, and you've got showing scheduled. Reach out to those agents, say, can you get in early, any earlier? This is what we're planning on showing. Or planning on taking.
And it's nice to update your listing too, if you're the listing agent, and just put that in there as well. Because sometimes we're a little crazy, and so that's kind of at least it's out there. But best case, you do
Yeah.
take 5 minutes and reach out to all of the showings that might have an interest in it. And it's doing the best for your client too, because if there's a buyer that there's interested, they might come in with the best offer.
And this is gonna sound really sad, but if they're hurried, they might be throwing out all their cards to win. So
Yeah.
you might get an even better offer. Like, honestly, a lot of times your best offer is the very last offer to come in.
I'm just, I had a listing and she had a buyer that wrote an offer and that's exactly what happened. And the last buyer was like, "Okay, I need to hurry and get something submitted." And they came in significantly higher because they wanted to be out of it.
So what you're saying is that kind of keep monitor, wait and see what offers come in to see,
As a buyer,
you know, as a seller.
yeah, yes and no, it's like, yeah, it's all a field game, you know what I mean? Like, if your buyers or if your sellers are overwhelmed with showings and you have multiple offers and you're seeing good offers coming in and you think they'd be very satisfied with an offer, they have every right to say, hey, we're not doing any more showings. People might be grouchy, but it's their house, it's their choice what they want to
Sure.
do. If you're not getting very good offers, but you're getting feedback, like it's possible you can see about changing something about the home if that's possible, if it's not, something that you can change about the home, maybe those offers are indicating where you should invest it. So it's, I don't know, it's kind of there's just, every home is different, every situation is
Well,
different.
if you set a deadline of when your offers are gonna come in, you're gonna get all of them anyway.
Yes.
And then
I
you can make an
agree.
assessment of which ones, do your research. Find out which ones are better qualified based upon their financing and everything, and then make those calls. And determine what's gonna work better for your client, right?
Absolutely. The only thing is I wouldn't put an offer deadline up until you have multiple
Yes,
offers.
That's what I mean.
Because
That's what I mean.
it's kind of funny when you go back and you look at, I always look at the history for the listing and you see offers due by this date. And then it's still on a week later and you're like, ooh, you jumped the gun a little bit.
Okay, yeah,
So- Yeah, you're kind of showing your hand at that point as a seller's agent, like, oh, we were so eager and now we've sputtered out.
Another thing to remember, I think this market is a little bit different, and I think depending on what the house is, what it's listed at, all of those things, like, I don't think be afraid to negotiate for your buyer, because for years, I don't feel like we could, now we can a little more. But also, as representing the seller, prepare your seller that anybody who's writing an offer, that's just them saying, hey, we want to play ball. We've got a lot of playing ball references today, but don't get offended. Like, I always tell my sellers, I'm like,
event on Thursday, that's why.
it's probably, that's gotta be, it, yeah.
she's got, she has the Yankees on her.
But- When someone gives us an offer, we don't get offended. We have the option to counter, accept, or reject. And I never suggest we reject. I don't care how crappy the offer is. The fact they took the time to come see the house and write an offer is them saying, hey, I want to write an offer and I want to get the best deal. Now we're the seller, so we're going to say, hey, we're glad you want to write an offer. We're glad you like the house and we want to get the best deal. So now let's negotiate, right? But I think that's an important thing, because I think we've lived in a mindset for so many years that the seller was king and the buyer had no power. And that's not the truth anymore. It's very much a neutral market, in my opinion.
Neutral market and depending on the house, and that we'll get
Yes.
more into it, but you always call that listing agent before you
Yes.
write an offer, because you never know. Because someone could be playing hardball and be like, oh yeah, we've got multiple offers, but then you call them and you kind of start digging and asking the right questions, you'll find out they don't have an offer. So then you can come in more competitive for your buyer and ask for some close spots. But on the flip side, some homes are still doing multiple offers.
And as a seller's agent, you do not lie. Do not lie. You will
Yeah.
get caught.
Yep.
Do
the right
not
thing.
lie. Yep, do the right thing. Don't ever say you have multiple offers if you do not actually physically have multiple
I don't
offers.
think we live our
You
life
need-
stuff.
I know.
Could just rule of thumb in general.
Yeah,
Don't just
you're right.
lie.
Yeah. Exactly.
So we've touched a little bit on the building report, the listing agent. So you've been through the home, you want to call and ask, you want to role play it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, do you want to be buyer? Oh,
Ring, ring.
Hello.
Hey, Kaylee, it's Jessie Thomas, KW Success. How are you today?
I'm good, how are you?
Good, thanks. So I just went through your house at 123 Main Street and my clients really like it and we'd like to put in an offer. Yeah, I just have a few questions for you.
Yeah, that's it.
Do you happen to have any other offers in hand yet?
We do, we have 2 in hand.
Oh, excellent. Would your sellers be comfortable sharing what those offers look like with me?
Yeah, I actually did ask them. They're right around list price and each of them are asking some concessions.
Awesome. Is there anything specific that your seller is looking for in an offer?
A quick closing, these guys are moving to Idaho.
Oh, okay, excellent. Is there a date that they need to have everything closed by?
Between the 17th and 20th.
Oh, perfect. I definitely believe that is what we can do.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. My clients are very well qualified. They're qualified with my absolute favorite lender, Canvas Register over here. And she just does a fantastic job. I'm actually gonna have her reach out to you after we've submitted our offer, so just keep an eye out for her call. And then is there anything else that I should know about the home? Anything from bond sellers disclosure? Like that?
No, it's a pretty clean home, ideally, and something that would appeal to them is, if they didn't do any repairs, depending on, the, like, what loan option they're going.
Perfect, sounds great. It would, and they'll accept an FHA offer. Correct?
Yes, as long as they're not asking for a hers. Where they're moving out of state, they don't want to touch the house.
I totally get it. All right, well, I think that's everything I have on my list here. Yeah, I'll let you know just as soon as I send that offer away.
Perfect, sounds great, thanks, Jesse.
You bet, Kaylee, have a great day. You too.
Get all the things.
I don't know, I may not have, that is my typical, and now
You
you're
inquire about the
Yeah.
offers on the property, you want to find out how many there are.
Mhm.
The seller's motivation, so our seller needed to get to Idaho. Ask question, let's see, ask listing agent how they want to receive the offer.
That's a good question. In Utah, it's really difficult way to send an email.
Yeah.
Do not send it through links. Send them,
A PDF.
download the PDF and send them the PDF.
I love the ball that's holding. Yes, send us a PDF.
We were gonna show her, we're not there yet. Never mind, keep going.
That is super annoying, especially when we're always on the go and you want to open it up on your phone. And Dotloop wants you to log in and you're like, why is this not working? And I don't have the login, like, just attach the damn. Make it easier for everyone. And it's way nice because when I get an offer from like a listing agent standpoint, like I look at how the offer is written. Are they making it easier for me to review their offer? And then the communication, like them, I'm still shocked at how many agents don't call and they just print an offer.
It's very
That's a disservice to your client.
off-putting, yeah, to receive a random email with a .loop link with no salutation or anything. Usually, sometimes it doesn't even have the agent's name or anything like
No.
that in it, contact information. And you just get it in your email and you're like, okay.
And then there's the grumpy ones that are
I
like,
just made a statement. Your agents don't call.
Yeah.
Agents
Yeah.
don't call who? What agent?
oh, the buyer's
Buyer's
agents.
Don't call sellers, agents.
They just send the offer.
Yeah. they
Without
send
any,
it out for
So
now.
I go show the house and then I just submit an offer. There's no communication. I'm not finding out.
There should always be.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah. So I always try to call first. If I don't catch them on the phone, I let them know through voicemail that I'm gonna send them a text message. And I send them a text message with my questions, but not just like a text message question. There's salutation and.
Yeah.
And all the good things, so.
Yeah, it's shocking that people don't want to communicate. It's a win-win. I don't want to do a bunch of paperwork either. Like, you get to a point where you're like, let's just communicate, negotiate this, and
If
just
we
want addenda.
Get it right,
See what I'm
straight out of the gate.
Which I
One
think we have this
addenda.
at another point,
Amazing.
but as a listing agent, if I'm gonna counter you on one thing, I'm gonna look through that offer and see if there's anything else I can counter you on. Because I'm already doing the work, so why not do another thing? So if you write a really clean offer, there's no reason for me to like comb through and find something else.
do you guys tend to pre-negotiate your offer before you write it?
It really depends on the situation.
Okay.
Like if the house has been on the market for a really long time, usually the selling agent is a little bit more willing to give you some more information. And you can, depending on if your client's comfortable with this, posit scenarios to see what will and what won't. But it's really kind of a rare situation where I do something like that. Like for instance, with those clients that had wanted to buy FHA with their FHA, but the house was not. When in my call, I was like, they are FHA. Is that something that your buyers or your sellers would accept? Like, that's a very important question to ask. Like, I shouldn't have even shown them the house, but I was in La La Land and didn't tell us. So that's on me. But also they were very determined anyway, so I don't think I would have gotten out of it anyways.
What if they say, no, we don't accept FHA, and that's discriminating you?
That's, no, because
It's not discrimination. The type of loan you can get or your financial situation is not a protected class.
Yeah.
So that is not discrimination. You do not have to accept any type of loan. You could put a house on the market and say, I want cash only, or I want conventional only, or I want VA only. It's not discrimination. And that's where you should be checking the MLS because, and you're saying your client's very determined. I would say, unless we have a reason that tells us you can do some other type of loan, there's no reason for us to see this home.
yes.
If they're not going to allow us to do an FHA. The type of financing you have does not align with this home. So either we have to look and see, do we have another option for financing, or I'm happy to check with the listing agent. And again, that conversation would be like, hey,
Well, that's the thing.
they tell me why what do you think is gonna be, do you think it's a repair issue? What is the issue?
And it's when I have those conversations, I could be like, hey, Rusty, yeah, we don't want to do FHA because the deck is peeling paint and they just don't have the time to take care of that. So if your clients are willing to do that and know that they don't have repairs, then maybe you can play ball.
Yeah,
And
because
then
maybe
she'll-
my client is excited about that and says, well, great, no problem, we're happy to go paint the deck, and now we've got an in to do it.
Yep.
Right, so then it becomes a win-win.
And on the buyer side, sometimes coaching them through those repairs, the seller's gonna do the half option. They're leaving the property, so if your buyer cares about it, like, and it's not.
Honestly, I've always, from the buyer's perspective, because I'm primarily a buyer's agent. If I can get concessions and give my buyer some money to do it and have it done professionally and right, I'm gonna choose that over having the sellers.
But remember, on an FHA loan, that's not gonna be accurate.
Yes, well, it depends on the,
FHA,
on the repair appraisals.
yeah,
yeah,
it's
versus-
appraised repairs.
Yes, yeah,
appraisal repairs.
versus, we're getting into the weeds.
I know, I had a seller who had to paint the deck in the middle of the winter, literally had to
So-
shovel snow off of the deck and paint it, which is not gonna last more than 5 minutes. Because you
Yeah.
had to do it to get it to close.
Oh my gosh,
So.
that's so frustrating. Hi Corey, welcome. Okay, sorry, we're going through negotiating now.
Any
Those are
questions?
really good questions.
Are we making sense?
I guess my question was
Okay.
about pre-negotiating.
Oh, yeah.
You're representing the buyer, you're the seller. Do you pre-negotiate on the phone between go back and forth before you write the offer? Like, is how much you're gonna put the offer in for, they go back and forth
I think
between,
it depends on
It
the.
really
state.
does. And like in the situation too, like honestly, there's situations where my buyers may not be able to come up to the list price, which is not ideal because you don't want to be showing houses where they can't make it, but we've
Right.
had an interesting market lately. And floating it by the listing agent to see if we're gonna get a straight out rejection. Then there's also a situation where if you send an offer over, they have to present it. So if that's the
Yeah.
only offer they're gonna get, you may as well still send it. So like, it's one of those things you kind of have to fill it out. If you're asking and they say no and you still send it, you're gonna irritate them. But they have to present it. If you didn't ask and you send it over, they may not be quite as irritated. I don't know. It's a lot of psychology.
okay,
It really
But
is.
yeah, that's every situation is gonna, you gotta feel it out. Like, I mean, that's the thing is like, you wanna be as courteous as possible, but also you wanna work on the client's best interest. So like, I had somebody who I had a very similar situation where I was like, I know this is a lower offer, but we have other things to offer, like quick close, like fast close. I'm like, maybe that'll get us through the gate. And I kind of felt him out on what offers he was getting. I could see that they were all higher and that he was reluctant to accept lower offers than the offers that he'd already gotten. So I didn't ask that question. I just sent my offer in as quick as I could. So because then he had to present. Because he was like, I'm doing it tonight. Okay, well, I didn't, I sent it in. He had to present it. We didn't get it, but I'm like, there's always the possibility. So it could go
you
either way.
just feel the situation.
Yeah. And on the flip side, sometimes the buyer's gonna get their feet wet too and throw in that low ball offer and then they're like, oh, I guess you were right. And we should have done. And we always coach our clients like right house, right time. So
Yeah.
if you don't get this one, like, let's move on. Like, don't fester in it, don't focus on it. Like, we did the best that we could in that moment.
They'll be very attached. When we're looking at houses, we say you can't love a house, you're not allowed to love it.
1 to 10 it.
Yep, you want to tenant, you can even like it. But we're dating, we're not married yet, so, yeah, yep. Let me say, don't even kiss it.
You gotta have a meeting.
Yeah, I think you gotta click on there again.
Yeah, sorry, anytime there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
Alright, writing the offer.
I've already touched base on this. These are all things that you can ask over the phone depending on how the conversation is going. If they're super short with you, don't keep them on the phone because then they're gonna be irritated with you and then like, that's gonna be how it's gonna be during the whole transaction.
Yeah,
They're gonna be like, okay, this dude is gonna keep on the phone the whole time, like, I don't wanna work with that. But if you're mirroring and matching how they're talking, then they're like, yeah, their offer was a little low, but I really like their communication style, like, I feel like we could get to the finish line. And then if you have your lender reach out too, that can really set you apart,
okay,
which I'm still, again, shocked. Lenders don't reach out and I don't understand why. So make sure that you have had that conversation with the lender, like, hey, can you reach out? Because it really sets you apart. Because oftentimes I'm like, oh yeah, didn't Candace call? Whoa, who is that agent? Like, which one's related to that one? Because like having that lender call really sets you apart.
oh yeah.
Because then it's showing that they're confident in the financing.
We missed something in our call, conveyances. So like if there's something you have a question about, like, is that shed that's a plastic movable shed that's not listed as included or excluded? But you saw it when you were there, if you have questions about it, ask, because if it's in the contract, then there's no question of need requires. Like, get those fine details if possible, right out the gate. Correct, like I said,
So you don't have any surprise.
yeah, no surprises, and it's minimal addendums as possible.
Lenders like clean contracts too. They don't wanna see back and forth, because then it also confuses them, like, wait, was it 5,000 of closing costs or 7,000? Because there's an addendum, like, keep it clean, again, that goes back to communication. If you're negotiating, do it verbally first and then.
Yes. Yeah, because if you send an addendum over legally, they have to present it and either accept or counter back. And you can have a situation where if you send over a long list of, we're getting into weeds again a little bit, but just if you send a long list of repairs over without discussing it beforehand, we've had that nearly kill a deal more than once. Because the lender sees that, and then on the back end, the underwriters, am I right, Candace, it's the underwriter, sees that and says, this house has all these problems, we can't lend on this house until these problems are resolved. It happened with Radon.
Yep.
Yeah, instead of talking with us and negotiating back and forth to come to a resolution, she just sent in an addendum, we have to present it. And then the underwriter says, we have to have radon mitigation put in. So then our sellers are stuck putting in radon mitigation, even though, in order to make the deal go through, and they're in a contract on another house, it just shit rolls. So just, yeah, so you just, I'm just, yeah, you got it. You got the story.
So going back to writing offers, it's really nice to have a checklist of these items so that you discuss it with your client, you say, okay, earnest money is X amount, these are the inclusions, so you're not going back to your client like, oh, wait, we need this and this and this. Have a checklist so that when you're having that conversation with them, you know all of your details. Then you go submit the offer and review it with them, because nothing's worse than like going back and forth, because then they're gonna get confused. You want it to be as clean as
And
possible.
it'll stress out a lot of people. Asking them even more and more questions throughout the process. I always tell them, first offer is always the hardest because you're learning. Then second, third, fourth offer, if we happen to have to get there, you're gonna tell me what price you want to offer, what earnest money you want to offer, if you want to make any changes to deadlines, and that's it. And then it's like, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, I can write your offer.
So due diligence, so earnest money, we were seeing about 1% of the purchase price, which is pretty common, but it's still, I wouldn't discourage your clients if they only have 5. That's not a make it or break it, because the contract in Utah is written in the buyer's favor. So it's not until you're past the financing and legal deadline that really talks to the seller.
So the earnest money is a decision made by the buyer. What do I want to, what can I go?
What can, yep, exactly.
I always say, what are you comfortable with? Because there was a point in time where the market was moving so fast, we were writing earnest money, non-refundable upon acceptance, non-fundable after due diligence, non-fundable after like 3 days after acceptance, like there was just, in order to negotiate and win the house. What are you comfortable with losing if this or this happens? Again, you gotta work on personalities, that will totally freak a lot of people out. But if they're being very aggressive and it seems reckless, bring them back to reality too and say, hey, if this happens, you will lose this money. Are you still comfortable with losing that much money? Like $10,000. Are you comfortable with losing $10,000? I've had to have that conversation. So just keep that in mind when you're talking about earnest money. But always more earnest money is very enticing to the seller. That's a way that you can really boost your offer if they have the ability to put more earnest money.
Also, when you're talking about earnest money, keep in mind, like a lot of times people don't understand, earnest money is collected and deposited at the time of within 4 calendar days of acceptance.
I
So
actually
make sure you're having that conversation with them and making sure that they understand that. This is where your lender comes in, is your partner in this as well. So there's times where people go, well, I don't have, like, I'm selling a house right now and they're buying another house and the earnest money amount on their house was $5,000. And they're worried now because they said, well, I don't have $5,000 to put for earnest money. We only have 3. Well, that's okay. Based on the price point they're buying it, that's a perfectly reasonable amount of earnest money. Right? So it's just making sure that you're explaining that too, because when you say, you know, we have to get a check for your earnest money within 4 calendar days of acceptance, sometimes people think that's just like a check you're holding. They don't understand that's actually deposited in our trust account.
So that's something when you're doing your buyer consultation, I address right out. I say earnest money usually is anywhere from ideally $1,000 up to 1%. More is more aggressive and is more likely to win your make your offer win. However, if you have less, that's okay. We can make it work. There's other ways to you make your offer strong as well.
And it's
And
really
then-
nice to address all of this before you have a house on the line.
Yeah.
We got this from when the market was crazy and we're rushing to submit offers and they didn't know they were doing because they just needed to get an offer submitted in 10 minutes after
Mm.
showing out. So going kind of through all of these details beforehand, before you have a house on the line is way better. Because then they're level headed, they don't have a connection to anything. They're like, okay, it's educational, okay, yeah, and then you can ask those questions and not be so timid about it. Because you're like, well, we have this house and we need $5,000, but really they only have 3, and if you know that ahead of time, you don't have to
Yeah.
push them for 5.
And you also know that there's earnest money. They know that the due diligence and inspection costs money
Yep.
upfront. So
Yeah.
they're walking into that and Kaylee's exactly right. They're walking into the situation because you had a great consult with them knowing, oh, okay, this is what I'm gonna need my earnest money. Okay, now we're gonna do the inspection and I need X amount of dollars for the inspection. Oh, the appraisal is gonna be ordered and the lender's gonna wanna pay me to pay for the appraisal. Okay, so then they can look at all that and say, well, I'm gonna do 3,000 for this, I need 500 for this, I need 600 for this. I need a total of this amount. So it just
Yeah.
keeps them, they're walking into it when their emotions are just even.
Yep.
Versus when their emotions are here and they're feeling like, I didn't know I had to pay for an inspection today. Yeah, it's all about conversation.
And you'll get this as experience goes too, because that's how it was in the beginning for me, is my clients are like, what are we doing? And I'm like, oh. But if you have these checklists, it makes it so much easier because it keeps you on task and you know that you're covering everything. We have initial calls when we talk to a seller and a buyer, so that we're making sure that we're asking all the questions. And then at the end, when we think we're done, we're like, okay, let me just make sure I don't have any other questions. And you actually go through your checklist and make sure you've covered everything. Because again, it's better to prep them for the expectations beforehand than when you're in the middle of chaos. and trying to set an offer.
With that, I've learned to cut down on the details that I give them because I am an overshare, over educator. I totally overwhelm people. Multiple times. So that's just, you have to kind of think, they don't know anything about what you're talking about. Give them the Cliff Notes version and how it's going to impact them.
And this is a plug for role playing.
Yes.
And a role play partner and go through it together. And that's what her and I do. And I'm like, okay, Kelsey, like,
Yeah.
you need to
Stop
chill.
talking.
Yes, stop talking, let them communicate as well. Because you are huge on educating. Sometimes that's a personality. Another thing to ask for. Oh, like,
Time for seller acceptance.
Yeah. So another, when you're on the phone call, like, hey, when are you going to review offers? When, like, what should I put the deadline as? Something to take note of, it's not a response deadline, it's an acceptance deadline. So if they're going to accept your offer, it needs to be within that time frame. But if they're gonna counter you, like, they have time after that to revise the offer and have buyer and seller agree. Because a lot of agents think that it's an acceptance deadline and they're so hardcore on it and they'll try to bully you into it, like, well, you have to respond to my offer, you have to accept my offer by X amount or X time, and don't let them bully you. Financing terms, this is where you,
Hold on, you're going from the seller's point of view on that one, so.
go ahead.
Okay, so time for seller acceptance, do not write less than 24 hours, because that's just kind of rude.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's really hard, like, when you're working with the buyer, you're texting constantly, you're in constant contact about everything, I feel like. When you're a listing agent, you only communicate if they've got questions or if something's happening with your listing usually. You're not kind of in constant communication every day. So sometimes it's really hard for sellers agents to get to have a whole conversation about what the offer actually looks like and what the implications are related to the offer within 24 hours with their seller. So always
And it
ask-
allows time for the lender to reach out.
Yes. Oh, yeah. So you always ask, okay, when you're reviewing offers, and then I like to give them usually at least 12 hours after they plan on reviewing offers for my acceptance deadline. So that I like to give them time, not too much time, but time.
And it's good to ask because what if the seller's out of town? And you give
Oh.
them an unrealistic time frame? You think that that's like, hey, when are you going to review?
I had one where it would take 2 days for the overseas person to even be able to electronically sign.
Well, and I have one that's in a state and there's 6 different people that have to sign on it every time.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of coordination, because it's
Yeah.
not just one person saying this. Yeah, a lot of coordination. Yeah, it's longer.
So it goes back to that communication of like, how long do you need? That's something that I think a lot of sellers agents appreciate. How long do you need to accept? What's the best response? more sense. Yeah. Okay, sorry.
You're good. So financing terms, this is where you need to be in constant communication with the lender and find out if they are conventional or FHA and what needs they have. Do we need closing costs? Are they able to roll it into their loan? And just so that you're writing the offer the right way, because nothing worse than when you write a conventional offer and the seller accepts your offer and you have to cancel because it's really your FHA and you've misled the seller.
That goes for down payment. And there's situations in which you don't want to put in the down payment amount. There was,
Right.
well, negotiation. I've had, I mean, and honestly, sometimes your clients are not comfortable with sellers knowing how much money they could put down. But a lot of times that is the point of like a good offer, more money down.
But it also, so what she's saying is like, it gives you, as the listing agent, like, oh, if they're putting $100,000 down, why are they asking us for $10,000?
Yes,
So
sorry, that's, yes.
Yeah, that's why I asked.
Yes,
Does that make
Yes.
sense to you guys?
want to put all your cards on the table right up front.
yeah, yes, exactly.
Why was I bringing that up? The finances.
There was more things into that. Oh, yeah, financing terms. Oh, so what's important is also talking with the lender and making sure what you're offering is not gonna put your buyers in the water. Like, honestly, you should not be offering more than what your buyers are qualified for. Take HOAs into consideration into what you're.
And comfortable monthly payment. That's
Yeah.
another conversation you need to have with your client. Because they might be qualified for X, but it's a $5,000 payment and they want to stay around 3. So you need to have those conversations up front, and then you can say, hey, like, if we go see this house, your payment's gonna be $3,800. Are you comfortable with that? So then you're not wasting anyone's time, because it's obviously everyone's gonna fall in love with the house. Expensive. So then they're going to go back to the house and be like, oh, remember that house on Bonnie Street? Like, I love that house. And you're like, yeah, but you don't want to pay a $3,800 mortgage payment.
When the
And they're gonna keep referring back to that.
next back to having good conversations with your lenders and a good relationship with your lender, like. We're lucky enough, we have Candace and be like, hey, here's what we're looking at. Are we good on payments? And she can let us know what the payment is, and we say, hey, here's what your payment. It just,
I think that's why we're seeing a lot of cancellations. Our buyers are so excited. They found a house they like and it's in the price point, but they didn't know the interest rate shoved up a little bit. And so then we get under contract, we negotiate. So we're doing our job, negotiate, get them under contract. And then they go back and they're like, yeah, this is what I want. And then she comes back to them and they're like, oh, it's $400 more. And then they cancel. So again, educating your clients up front, communication up front is going to save everything. Buyer pre-approval letter. Never, ever, 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 ever send an offer over without this. It's crazy, again, how many agents just send over offers. I need to know who the lender is. Like, I want to talk to them and have a conversation, make sure they got the full credit and that they're qualified. I don't want to waste their time going under contract with buyer. They haven't submitted anything to it.
Do you guys all know what a pre-approval letter is?
Not familiar with it, but I'm aware.
So it's a letter that the lender will have that has their contact information, depending on how you want to negotiate. Sometimes it'll have your buyer's qualifications on it, things like that. Loan type. And usually, I mean, you want to have it go through the automated underwriting, desktop underwriting. I don't remember.
And that just means that they are one step
Yes.
closer to getting their final approval. They just need the house and the appraisal.
So having that already ready to go shows that your buyers are qualified and literally ready to go and can perform on the timelines that you put out. And again, that's another thing with the lender timeline. Make sure that you're giving your lender enough time to get the job done because they've got a lot going on the back end that you don't see. So like, I wouldn't write an offer with a close deadline under 2.5 weeks. Unless they have cash. That's the only reason why I would write. And even if it's really tight, if it's like 3 weeks, I would double check with the lender to make sure that they can do it. Because you don't want to put them in a bind. And I don't even like 3 weeks. I like 4 weeks because then everybody has enough time to breathe and everything's getting.
And then you don't have
done.
to ask for an extension.
Yes. Like, it's not the end of the world, but it's not the best thing ever.
Closing date, kind of touch on that, like make
Yeah.
sure it's realistic.
Mhm.
Home warranty. So this one's kind of a hit or a miss. Depending on if you're in a multiple offer situation, it's $600, so it's not a huge amount. But some seller personalities are gonna be like, oh, they're asking for closing costs and they want this and they want this. Oh, and they want a home warranty. And so depending on the seller personality, which is hard because we don't directly deal with the seller. But sometimes that is a way that you can appeal, on your offer, is to not have that included. We have taken it upon ourselves on our team that if we are not able to negotiate that, we cover it. Because then that's peace of mind for your buyer. It covers
Oh, yeah.
almost everything on the inside of the home, if anything was to fail or go wrong.
And-
For a $65 service fee.
Honestly, because there's a second negotiation phase once you're under contract, it helps with that second negotiation phase with your buyers.
Yep.
So, yeah. It's like smooths a lot of things over.
And if you don't ask for one, you do an inspection, you find out that everything's working, but it's all old. You can negotiate $600 and then it's a win-win for the seller because they don't have to do repairs and if the seller's or the buyer is covered for the first year.
I was just gonna say, if the seller even peace of mind knowing that they bought from a buyer of a warranty. So if something did go wrong in that first year, that they didn't anticipate going wrong either, the buyer's not coming back to them accusing them of not disclosing something or not being willing to fix it. So I think it just gives everyone peace of mind, to be honest.
Oh, yeah.
That's really nice.
So as a listing agent, if
Yeah.
you're listing, it's a good conversation to have with your seller as well, like, we're probably gonna get asked for this, and I recommend that we. agree to
That's
this.
exactly my conversation that I have with my sellers, is that we do want to cover this if possible, because then it's just an added insurance. Right, policy, like if something was to fail, they can't come back to you and freak out, It's like, hey, we gave this.
How do you set up a closing date? According to who or
Your deadline or the actual closing?
the actual closing?
It depends on everybody's schedule, honestly. So.
That is a good thing to ask. If-
Yeah.
If it's in the summer, especially like, hey, when are you guys going camping? Are you gonna be out of town? I've had that happen a few times because I never asked. And they're like, oh, closing next week, but we're gonna be camping. And we're like, oh. crap, so
You
we have to
physically
kinda-
need your butt in
Yeah.
front of a notary to close. So that's, I mean, that's something to also, if you're communicating right up front with your clients and you let them know for closing, we physically, you go into an office, you have to present your ID and prove who you are in order to sign. Then they're already thinking ahead, when we're writing contract. I mean, make sure you go over dates with them. We'll show you what we do with, for our
Who's
offers,
the
but
most important one who closes the lender, right?
Mhm.
When he-
everybody's important.
I think everyone.
Every,
Buyer and seller have to be there to sign.
yeah.
So if they can't be there, it doesn't matter if the lender.
There's no money, no, nothing, so the letter is the most important, right?
No, it depends on if the lender, Candace can be uptown.
Yeah.
And we can still close the loan, because she's got a team of people working behind her. If my buyer can't be there to sign,
Then they can't close.
then we can't close the loan. If the seller can't be there to sign to deed the property, we can't close the home. Sometimes you may not even have a loan involved.
Yeah. It,
So I guess to go back
So
to the
your
question,
client
is buyer
has to
and
be able to
seller.
make sure.
Because
Yes.
even us as agents, we don't have to be there.
well,
right?
and also, so,
What about the lender?
The lender doesn't have to be there.
A lot of
Oh,
agents
yeah.
actually don't go.
No, I'm not talking about being
Oh.
there, I'm talking about having the funds, I don't care about the.
you're kind of asking how it all works, the mechanics behind the scenes.
Yeah, but
Okay,
the
that's
lender-
good questions.
Says, I need 25 days.
Oh, that's like what she was
Oh,
saying,
yeah.
is to check with
Yeah.
your lender on the dates to say,
Yeah, how long they.
is it
hold
3
it.
weeks, is it 4
Yes,
weeks?
yeah, so when you're writing, you don't want to write your close date too soon for your lender. Your finance and appraisal date too soon for the appraisal. We can go into it a little bit further, trying to remember what we all want to do.
There's a lot.
Yeah, there's I mean, we're going over the contract basically, and that's
Yeah.
the biggest thing of what we do for the most part, I feel like. But yeah, so you just ask them.
Depend on the lender,
Yeah.
how many days it needs.
Yes, yep. And also what the seller wants. Some sellers may actually like a further out closing versus a closer closing, depending on what they want to do. And another thing for your clients, your buyers, is depending on what time of the month they close and other factors, there's other ways to do it. But
The first payment.
when they're first payment. And if they're in a lease situation, switch it out past that point so that they're not also paying their rent and their first payment right next to each other.
And if it's longer than what the seller wants, but that's ideal for your client, communicate that
Yeah,
to the listing agent, so the listing agent isn't like, oh, they have a 6-week closing, why?
that's
communicate
very
that front.
unusual, but yeah, let them know why you have unusual.
Communication.
Who do you guys use for your home warranty typically? IBEX.
And then,
And it just
Equity.
depends, so, because I use equity,
You're right.
right? So it just depends. I mean, I think that you get to know people, you get to know them,
yeah,
understand what the home warranty covers. And here's another just little side note. Please don't when there's repairs, tell your people it's okay, it'll be covered by the home warranty.
They will not.
That is not what the home warranty's job is. And also, I never say, oh, the home warranty will cover anything. I say the home warranty will help offset the cost of a repair if it's something that's covered,
Yep, yes.
right? Because you're setting yourself up for one pissed off client if you're telling them or
It's gonna
presenting
take
it
care
in
of
a way.
everything.
Yeah, we had a situation not that long ago that the agent's not here anymore, so I won't say any names, of course, but they kind of presented it as like, oh, you don't need to get the furnace. The inspector had said, hey, something's not right with the furnace. I would have an HVAC person come in and just dig a little deeper. Is it blowing air? Is it working? Sure, but something's not quite right with it. They said, oh, it's fine. The home warranty will cover it. They make a claim within a week of moving in. The home warranty goes, hey, well, this is unusual because there was like a balloon that had all this other stuff. It definitely couldn't have happened this week. And they didn't end up covering it. And the client was extremely upset and calling the brokerage and bringing the brokerage in because their agent's advice was, don't worry about calling someone. The home warranty will cover it.
So what happened in that?
They didn't cover it. I don't know what the final result was. I think it went back and forth a little bit. I think the agent then was trying to get the inspector to pay for some of it. I think they called the home warranty company, and I think the home warranty company ended up paying a little bit. And I think the agent probably ended up paying for part of it, but I mean, it wasn't even like a small, it was like thousands of dollars of repair.
Correct me if I'm wrong, IBEX just went up to $900.
I'm still 7.
They just increased to 7.
I think it's 7.
Is it 7?
Yep.
Well, I'm up.
I just barely
then-
found out.
Okay.
Equity,
I was like, yeah.
and equity is giving 2 years of coverage. I don't know how long they're gonna run that
Good to
session,
know.
but I didn't
And like-
see that yesterday.
Like
So
Chris
giving
said, like
2
you want to
years,
build those
2 years
connections
plus.
too with your vendors.
That's a good deal.
Yeah.
You want to build those connections because if there is a problem, you want to know, like, I can call, so, and again, it doesn't matter if it's Christina or Joel and Yancy or Jessica or whoever it is. You want to be able to call that person and go, hey, help me, I've got an upset client. I'm not calling you, I'm never calling saying, you're gonna cover this. I'm calling and
We're in
saying,
it as a team.
yes, exactly. I'm calling and saying, hey, help me understand. My client called me. They're super frustrated about the furnace. Help me understand what happened. Why aren't we covering it?
Yeah.
Right? And then the home warranty company is gonna go, because it was clearly broken at the time of inspection. And they don't want to produce an inspection report that tells us it wasn't broken. So if they can show us that, then we'd be happy to provide one. Yes, right? So it's, and then we get to go back because our buyer's telling us something else. We go back to the buyer, but that's assuming we did our job right in the first place. If you're telling your buyers the home warranty is gonna be a free for all coverage, it is not. No, we're in a little rabbit hole, sorry.
Well, yeah,
I'm gonna continue to move on for a second. It's relevant. Women's Council of Realtors is where you can meet a crap ton of vendors, so
Yes.
like, that's the reason.
and
I
it's
know
kind
all
of plug
these
into
people.
that, not only vendors, but
Mhm.
getting to know other agents.
Yes.
Yes, it's amazing because even if you don't work with them, you have that relationship with them and you can call them and be direct, like, hey, Rusty, tell me what I gotta do to get this house.
Yeah.
And if she has permission from her seller, she's gonna tell me what I need to do. And she knows that, like, if we're connected like on social media and we've talked before, she knows that I'm gonna get the job done. Where a lot of people are strangers and they don't know that.
Honestly,
And
for me,
I'll go ahead.
what I was gonna say, there's no difference between my relationship with realtors within my brokerage and realtors that I know from Women's Council of Realtors. Like, it's that close and tight and get to know people, and it means so much to your business.
Yeah.
Like, honestly.
And you guys, I know we talked about this in some of our earlier sessions, how important your reputation is in the business. And if I know, like, let's just say I know Jessie through Women's Council and I know she's great, she's easy to communicate with her clients. She does a great job for her clients. I see she's doing business. And I know someone else in the industry that I've always had a bad experience with. They cancel every time. They're rude. They're hard to work with. They're hard to communicate with. If that offer looks the same, who do you think I'm gonna talk to my client? And I feel like that is your duty. It's not talking
Educate.
disparaging
Yeah.
about the other agent. I'm not gonna say that agent's terrible, but I'm gonna say, do you know what I do know? I do know that Jessie takes great care of her clients. She's great to communicate with. We get along really well. I know it's gonna be a smoother transaction for both of you. I have not had a good experience in the past with this other agent. They were hard to get a hold of. They didn't communicate well. Our deal fell apart, right? That is my job to tell your clients that. So anyway,
Sorry,
good
so
plug.
excited,
And
but I was like,
agree.
there's a reason to join Women's Council of Realtors. I will be the president next year.
Is there a men's council? of realtors?
Men
can be
but
part
yeah,
of it.
men can be part of it. Our state president right now is a man. So.
Well, happy day.
He's really nice.
There is the 5K on Saturday.
Yes.
Yes.
You have a 5K on Saturday.
I will.
Okay. Oh, the hair limit, on the
Yes.
FHA addendum. There's a little section that you put in an amount. If you walk through the home and you see any repairs that might need to be called out on the FHA appraisal, you do have a section in here that you put an amount. Do not throw out a crazy random number, because then that's gonna deter them, because what you're doing with that. If the seller agrees to that, they've already agreed to cover the $2,000 that you asked for. And if you, when multiple offers and one buyer only asked for 200 versus 2,000, and they're identical, you wanna go with that. If there were repairs that you noticed that really are $2,000, communicate that with the seller. When that appraisal comes in, and if there's repairs that need to be done, it's just a renegotiating point at that time anyway. So if you didn't see a repair that was $1,000 and that comes up, you just go back to the sellers at that time and say, hey, look, this is what came up, how do we make this acceptable to the buyer? So don't scare them away with that dollar amount.
When it comes to writing your offer, the FHA repair addendum will absolutely need, FHA VA loan addendum will absolutely need to be in your contract, so it better be in your contract right out the gate. Negotiated, done, taken care of. Because if you have to put it in later, you are asking them to negotiate again. So it should just be with your offer right out.
Special clauses. You
Okay.
have a house to sell, disclose it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes, don't lie about it.
So that's often what's called a contingent offer. So if you have somebody talking about a contingent offer, that's what they're talking about. It's the offer is usually contingent upon them selling a house in order to buy.
Any addendum, just like we talked about, if it's an FHA loan, you need to disclose that and put it in.
And this is a weird thing that Kaylee has always done and taught me, but write out in caps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the addendum. I don't
Do
know
you
why,
do
but
that,
now it bothers me.
I don't.
Like
I think it comes from handwriting it
Yeah.
forever ago before.
But
it was
it's-
a thing.
Spelled out. I don't know. I like doing that. For to me, it feels neat now.
Unique.
Yeah, well, there's no question. I guess when you handwrite it out and there's, it's smudgy handwritten.
Every month Sean does a contracts class and I do it with him some of the times too. If you guys haven't been to that, come to it because we go in a lot of detail about, this is more about like talking through the offer and what that looks like, but we go into just like the nitty gritty of like the 1, 2, 3, 4. Or making sure that you're checking the appropriate boxes. We're not leaving blanks. Cause just like Kaylee was saying earlier, if you don't write a clean offer, it's a red flag to me. I'm like, oh my gosh, this offer is a disaster. It's already a disaster. And we haven't even started working together.
And honestly, if you're a new agent, you write an offer like a new agent, I can tell that you're a new
Yep.
agent and I know that I'm gonna get far further with you, far more out of you and your buyers than a seasoned agent. So people will take advantage of that. People will take advantage of you. Do not let them take advantage. If you have questions, reach out to somebody that knows.
Talking through the offer, so review the contract, like we said, have that checklist. Have those items that you need to fill into those blank spots in the rep sheet, and then review the offer with your buyer, make sure they're comfortable with what you've written in there before they sign it. I think we, especially when the market was fast moving, we got really lazy and we would just send it to them and they have no idea what they're signing, they're trusting you. And like, we're human beings, we can make errors, so you want to go through it with them to make sure you didn't make an error. Be sure your buyer understands the contract, especially that very first time. Jesse's really good at this. She's like, okay, I'm gonna allot time after the showing, like, I really think they're gonna like this house. I'm gonna mark out an hour after that so that I can actually go through the contract with them, make sure they fully understand it.
Yeah, like when they're gonna lose earnest money, that's a big thing.
Yeah.
Your clients need to know when their earnest money is gonna be.
Don't sugarcoat anything when it comes to this. It's a legal binding agreement and we're dealing with their money. This is the biggest financial investment that they're going to make. Don't sugarcoat it, be direct with them. Know what is essential in your area. So if you've got a home that you're like, oh, I really need to ask for closing costs, you could simply look up other homes in the market area that have sold recently, like in that little neighborhood, and see if there's concessions.
Yeah.
See if it's normal for that neighborhood to pay for closing costs.
This
Um,
goes hand in hand with, you can't get a hold of the agent, but you need to get an offer in before the.
5 p.m. deadline.
Yeah, yeah. Look at recently sold in the neighborhood and like, that way you also know if you're way off base.
Yeah.
Like if your clients are like, oh, let's ask for this or let's give this. It's a good indicator.
Avoid rookie mistakes. Kind of what we talked about, make sure that your offer is written really well.
So you guys use this form with your clients?
Every offer at the end of my DocuSign is this form at the very bottom. So that they can look at it and it's the very last thing. So it's not like if they click on something, it's gonna scroll away. They have to, it's sitting there for them to look at and read until they click finish. So this is so that they know exactly what we're offering. These are all the relevant facts related to what decisions they make when writing an offer. And it outlines very clearly on what section, like we have checked the due diligence condition, you can cancel before the due diligence deadline. That due diligence deadline is right here. You know what I mean, for the reasons outlined in this section. If they've got the offer, they will have the offer, they can review what that section means. So the reasons why they can cancel before that deadline is still good. Like I outline it for them so that they know what they're signing and what.
And then they can't come back to you and be like, what did we sign? You're like, it was right here, you signed this document, like, we broke it down for you really.
I also sign it, because I'm like, I wrote this, I'm putting my name on it,
Yeah.
like, I know that I wrote this and sent this.
And then
to
I
you,
went,
that's what I
I
said.
reviewed it with them, yep.
It's really good.
So can we?
Well, it was crazy.
This as well?
Copy it, go for it.
It's really good.
It was crazy in 2020, like you were writing offers left and right. We didn't even know what we were doing at that point. So it's really
No.
nice. And that's when she created this. It's like, okay, what are we doing on this house? Because we really were giving the seller exactly what they wanted. And so it got really confusing. And this is something that we love. And so we've obviously kept it in our toolbox.
All deadlines due at 5 p.m. That's something to let your clients know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's like kind of a cover your butt, but also like that makes sure that your clients are very well informed in what they're doing.
It's also a system that holds you accountable to making sure that your clients are all getting the same experience. And that you just know that you explain everything to them, kind of another checkpoint. Any aha,
Everything.
everything. That's good. That's a compliment.
The summary, this is, I think,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah, that, rip off and repeat.
Yeah.
Don't let somebody else, I'll be honest.
I love that.
Very similar to. Calling the name of the development.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, so the transaction checklist.
Yeah.
Yeah,
similar,
it's
yes.
very similar. So this is just for your buyers, like, you don't wanna take a transaction checklist and go off of that for your buyers, because they're gonna be confused, you're gonna be confused. And it's not really relevant to what they need to know. This is what is relevant. to what
This is
they
like
need to know
the,
to make their decisions.
what are the books called, like, something for dummies? Like, it just really condenses it
Yeah.
down, so they can look at one sheet.
You're really getting
Oh,
off
yeah.
for them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you have anything like that that you use?
Let me see what it was, sorry. Yes, you did, give me the copy.
Sorry. I take. You don't.
I don't do something like this because I do go through, but I love this actually. This is very similar to my templated that I send out when we are under contract, because I don't think here's the deadline,
Yep.
here's where all these things
We all
are.
heard
So
that.
this is very similar to this. I love this. I think it's great. The other thing is, it actually is our job to tell our people what they're signing, contrary to the belief of some agents. It is our job to explain the contract. So if you don't script practice and role play anything else, script practice and role play, going as though you sit down as though you're the agent and have someone sit across from you as though they're the buyer. Because it is different reading in your head or answering questions on a test versus actually explaining to somebody what that clause means. Right? If you don't know what it means, due on sale clause, you don't know what that means, and somebody asks you, you need to know how to explain it in terms that someone's going to understand. Does that make sense? Because it's different reading it yourself. And yes, you should read the contract, because most of the questions we get, if someone would just read the contract, it's there in plain sight.
But they don't do this every day. so
But they
when
don't
read
do it
that,
every
they
day,
fog
so
over.
they see it and they fog over. Your job is to help them understand, hey, here's the things with due diligence, and you don't have to read it to them word for word, but you should be able to explain to them, during our due diligence period, you're gonna be able to resolve any issues that you may potentially have with the house, physically, the space, the location, the crime statistics, the sex offenders registry, all of those things are encompassed in due diligence. It's really your term to determine you're buying the house that you want at the terms you want to buy it. right? But until you go through the contract a few times, you're not gonna be able to explain it at that level.
Yeah.
So
Early
that
on-
is one thing you should be practicing with people.
Yeah, early on, I went through and like each section, I was like, okay, I'd read it and I'm like, okay, how does this make sense to someone that is not in real estate? And
Yeah.
I did like a 1 or 2 liner. And then I would role play that and then get used to explaining it out.
Another important reason to do that is you can freak your clients out if you give them, if you tell it to them in a way that is likely to freak them out. Oh, you'll lose your earnest money. That's what that one.
Yeah, you need to explain it. At what point will you lose your?
This just defines, and that's what I like to say a lot. This defines when this or this, or if this happens, this is what will happen. It tells us what will happen. If this situation arises.
We're only halfway on yours.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, yeah, keep going.
This is recording too, so it's gonna pick up all that.
Sorry.
Double check all the documents. Again, this is a good point to go through with your clients and make sure that everything is as discussed. Follow instructions, label all documents clearly. That kind of goes to the 1, 2, 3 things.
Yeah.
It's a little different now that we type it out, but when we were handwriting them 12 years ago, it was a little different. The email summary, when you're sending the offer over to the other side, it's really nice when you've got a little blurb that's broken down. Like, hey, this is our offer price, this is our loan option, here's the deadline, the inclusions, and any other details if you have a house to sell. Because if they're on the go, they can look at it and then they say, hey, you guys, we just got this really good offer. I'm driving, but these are the details. Let me get back to you and like we'll go through it a little bit further. Again, it's making it easier for the other side. And they're more likely to come back to you because you're gonna be easy to work with and you're setting that stage up front.
We use the same email template for every offer that we submit. It's got our headline, our logo on it. It's got a little blurb about us at the very bottom. It has all of these details, for the most, all of these details here outlined so that the agent knows. exactly what you're offering.
This is a good rule of thumb. Notify the listing agent that you sent an offer. They should know that you're writing one to begin with, but always text them and say, hey, I just sent you an offer. Jesse's email is famous for this. She always goes into spam. So if she doesn't communicate, guess what? That listing agent never knows that she submitted. an
They
offer,
never,
Even though she said that she was going
I'm
to.
like, maybe check spam. I get
Yep.
sent there sometimes.
So just double communicate, and this goes for the entire transaction. If you send it over an addendum, yes, they should know that it's coming ahead of time, but still double communicate. Hey, I sent you an email, did you get it? It just makes sure that everyone's on the same page and you're
I
not.
would say
missing deadlines.
ask if they've received it, let me know if they received it, because I'm like, hey, I sent it to you, check spam.
Add all documents to command. We are supposed to be submitting any offers into command. There's a spot for them in the opportunities. And then consult with your buyer, let them know that, hey, I've submitted your offer. We should know by 5 p.m. tomorrow. Or they are reviewing offers at 5 p.m. tomorrow. Kind of set that expectation. Like it might take them a few hours and sometimes sellers need to sleep on it and make a decision too. So that they're not expecting an answer at 5 p.m. when
That's right. Usually my offer deadline is noon the day after they are looking at offers. That's just my personal preference.
I've got a question. Do you present them all at the same time?
As a listing agent,
Well, as the listing agent, do you present them all at the same time or do you send them in as you get them?
I send a little text like, hey, this is the offer. Here's the little like clip note version.
Okay.
And then I put them in, especially if we go multiple offers, in a spreadsheet so you can see them side by side.
But you don't send them like as they come in.
It depends, I think it's personal preference too, right? Like, and I think we're dealing with this less.
Yeah.
But when they were getting 30 offers over a weekend, I'm not gonna take the time to go through 30 offers in one time, obviously unless my seller asks, right? So I would present that at the beginning. In the event we get multiple offers, are you okay with me letting you know that we've got multiple offers? And then when we meet, because again, I think it's really important for you to go through and make sure your seller understands what they're signing and accepting as well. When we meet, we're gonna go in detail over the offers. I'll just let you know as I get them. And then I've got my spreadsheet. We're gonna go through the pros and cons of each offer. And we're gonna go through it because you should be going through, just like you do with your buyer, with your seller, you should be going through each section and what are they committed to in those sections. So I tell them, if I'm reviewing multiple offers, I'm like, we're gonna go to this one in detail. Here's the spreadsheet, because I have a spreadsheet too. Here's our spreadsheet that outlines each offers. I got some pros and cons of each one at the bottom. We're gonna go into detail on this first one because it's a boilerplate contract. So we're gonna go into the detail on this one, and then we're gonna go into the differences and the nuances of each one. So then you're not going through 6 pages plus addendums 5 times. You're going through it one time, and now you're pointing out the differences.
And that is gonna prevent burnout from your seller. If you're going through 6 different contracts, they're not gonna know the difference.
No.
It's just like if you show your buyer 6 homes in one night, they're all gonna blend together. And then, I love this kitchen and that deco wall. You're like, yeah, those are 2 different houses. Like they blend together, like make it easy for your clients too. Any other aha? Receive and respond.
Yes.
Make sure the offer is complete. Again, if you're a newbie agent and you write an offer like a newbie agent, we're gonna be able to tell. And like you said, we could take, not a.
We would,
An agent is going to,
but you definitely, you're like, opportunity.
yeah, there's been a lot of those that I call them, I'm like, hey, is this what you meant? Like, be honest, do the right thing. Yeah, is this what you meant? And she's like, oh, yeah, like, yeah, let me fix that. And just, again, communication. But make sure your offers are good.
I would
Really
review
well.
it all the way before you call, so that if it's multiple things, you're only making one phone call.
Yeah. Yeah, but, confirm receipt of the offer, hey, I've received it. Get offer to the seller in a timely manner, like, don't wait a week, obviously, like, let
Make
them know.
note of that acceptance deadline, like, it just makes things easier if we are compliant with those deadlines as much as we can, but.
Create the executive summary, which again, that's kind of like our spreadsheet for comparing them side by side. Call the buyer's agent. If you have questions on an offer before you sit down with your sellers, ask them. Give them a call and be like, hey, and the more you do this, the more you're like, hey, like, I'm probably gonna go with this one because they go quickly and it nets them the most. But if you have a question on it, you can go to the buyer's agent upfront and be like, hey, I just want to give you a call. I want some clarification. If my buyer or my seller has this question, like, how are you guys going to respond? So that when you're sitting at the table with your sellers, you're like, hey, I did give them a call. I had a feeling you might go with this offer. This is what they can do in this situation. Should we go back to that? Does that make sense?
And
It was a little confused. I
know.
don't like confused.
these, this, it's easier to write an offer than present it, I feel like.
Call the lender if they haven't called you. It doesn't hurt to give them a call to find out that they pulled credit, they've reviewed, if they actually are employed and not just stating that they are. That's really tough when they're like, yeah, I submitted everything, but the lender hasn't verified anything.
This is a great one if you have a few minutes to stay after to just chat with Candace. I don't know how long you're gonna be here, but she can tell you basically like, here's the questions that you should be asking. Because this is gonna help you determine, are they really pre-qualified or do they just call somebody and be like, you just send over a letter?
Yep.
And what's the difference, right? So
Yeah.
if you have a couple minutes, because that will make
Yes.
you look like a rock star.
Oh, yeah.
Create an outline document to reference when you call the sellers. That's our spreadsheet. It's a side by side. It goes down, okay, this is the loan option. Did the lender call me? I have like a yes or no. Purchase price, deadline, earnest money, when it goes non-refundable, what inclusions are they asking for? Their timeline, anything specific on it.
Warranty.
Yeah. Just break it all down so that it's easy to look at the 3 offers side by side.
We even go through communication notes, like if they communicated, we
Yep.
noted on there, the agent called me, the lender called.
Command, Kylie teaches a lot of classes on command. We're gonna skip that this part.
Yeah.
Again, so when you submit an offer, a seller can accept, counter offer, or reject the offer. Does that make sense? Do you have any questions on that? Kind of the same thing.
We went into the weeds, I think, already.
Yeah. Training to get better with your feedback, give us yours.
So, That. What are we at?
Do each of you have a card, of course?
You know, they can do, they can share their contact information. with
Yes.
I've got a question, just double checking things.
Yeah.
You don't have to respond to all the offers, right? So like you said, like you reject, do
Uh,
you reject all 30 offers? Like if you're only accepting one, or how do you?
Rusty, what do you want for this one?
What was the question? Sorry.
So if you've got 30 offers, you have to reject all of them, like with the.
With signature?
Okay, do you? No, you don't. The offer acceptance deadline. It's not an offer response deadline. It's an offer acceptance deadline. So if I write an offer on Wes's land, property, whatever it is, and I put an offer acceptance deadline of Friday at 2 p.m. and Wes presents the offer to his seller, because you are required to present it, and he presents the offer to his seller. And then I 2 o'clock comes and 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock, and I say, Wes, are people gonna respond to my offer? And he says they rejected it. It doesn't matter if he signs a rejection or not, the deadline has passed to accept it. At that point, if his seller then says, oh, I actually do want to accept it, then we actually do need an addendum because we've gone beyond the acceptance time. But also, if you're countering anything, you're countering everything. So if he counters me by $1 and sends that back to me, now we have a new acceptance time. So we don't have to say acceptance deadline to be because it wasn't accepted by that time, right? Here's the thing that you'll run into sometimes. Wes wants some kind of proof that, or I may want some kind of proof. Did you actually even present it to your seller? Because it didn't seem like you did. I can request that.
Yeah.
The seller does not have to go through and reject 30 offers. That is, the offer has lapsed. So the buyer's agent may ask for some proof of rejection. You can then ask your seller, hey, the buyer's agent's just asking for proof that I presented it to you. Are you okay just signing a rejection? And then you can check rejection and send it back as proof. I think that sometimes that's a nice, it's a nice.
It wraps it up.
It wraps it up, it ties it with a nice little bow, but are you required to? No. And quite frankly, with 30 offers, I wouldn't take the time. Now, here's the difference that I would do. I would take the time to let the buyer's agent know you're not going to be accepting their offer. Because they're sitting there waiting, their buyers are waiting, they're nervous. Don't be the guy that just doesn't respond and then marks it as under contract. I've had that happen to me where my buyers have called me upset and said, it's under contract on the MLS.
And they
I guess we
always
didn't get
see
the
it
offers.
first.
They will see it.
The
Yes,
buyers
see it
always
first.
see it
They're just long before you do, because you're not watching it like they are. So be the agent you want to have on the other side, right? So honestly, like, do you have to? No. If they ask you, do I think it's a nice courtesy? Sure. And if your seller's like, why would your seller care? If you actually presented the offer, your seller's not going to care. But I'm not going to make my seller sign 30 rejections, but I am going to communicate with those agents that they did get the offer accepted.
When it was that crazy and we had multiple offers like that, I would send an email to myself and BCC all of those agents and just say, hey, they went with this offer, just so that I was at least communicating with them.
Yeah.
And it's a little easier for me. Yeah, because when you have a listing, especially at that time, when you're getting 30 offers, like your texts are insane. You're going to miss an agent. And that's when I created the email so that I could make sure that I got everyone, because it does that when you're the buyer's agent sitting there waiting.
Yeah.
Make sure you BCC because
Yes.
you don't necessarily want all those agents to know who put it off. They don't want to. They don't.
Is there an issue with that? Like I've always just
No.
BCC.
I think that's totally fine as long as you BCC it. Please don't CC it.
Yeah.
Please
Do you guys know the
CC
difference
everybody
of what
in the party.
BCC and CC is?
BCC is a blind, so essentially means blind carbon copy. So they're gonna get the exact same email, but the only person that sees who you sent it to is the sender. So if Kaylee sends an email and she sends it to her and Jesse, and then she BCCs the rest of us, none of us see that we're on that email. We only see Jesse and Kaylee. And if I reply all, I only reply to Jesse and Kaylee.
Yeah.
Right, I don't reply to everybody. Quite frankly, the BCC, I think, is a common courtesy anytime that you're replying to something to a lot of people. Because there's always the one guy that's gonna reply all, and it's like, got it, with a thumbs
Yeah.
up, and you
Oh,
get
right.
1,400 emails
And
like
then
that,
everybody
so
responds with, hey, can you stop replying all? They reply all.
then they
too.
still do,
Like,
yeah. So anyway, that's the difference between the two. So short answer, no, you don't have to reject it. Long answer is,
And like that goes back to reputation
Yes.
too. If you're an agent that's not responding to other agents, like they're gonna remember you the next time that they.
Don't
and
you
they're not
think
gonna be very responsive to responding. You be,
Nope.
don't you think that goes across the board on everything?
Every
Especially-
100%.
Especially like if you're showing a house and
Yes.
and people want to know what you thought of the house, it just as common courtesy.
Yes,
to
I
say,
have it on I do a daily download, that if I showed any homes that day, I want to send them a text with feedback. Because yes, it just comes back, especially if people keep their texts like I do. I can see how you treated me, and if it was fun to communicate with you, even though you just showed a house. Like, it's nice to be like, oh yeah, you were fun, even though we didn't work together, like I know that you're fun to work with. So that when they come back around,
100%, you hit the nail on it.
Yep.
You want to be the person that when you text me, even if it's a text, when you text me for feedback, and I look and see like every time I've texted you, you've responded back, I'm gonna be way more willing to put you at the top of my list
Oh, yeah.
for the feedback. And I'm gonna give you good feedback. That's the other thing, like be good with your feedback, but either way, like That's a
Just
little.
getting into the, like,
yes,
wrong feedback, a lot of
1000%.
agents are gonna just screenshot what you say and send it, so make sure that you're not.
Filter,
Yes.
filter
nice
your
words.
client's feelings
Yes.
into a kind and considerate, but also honest response.
Into the weeds.
Yes.
Oh, that's. not
We
what
role
we
playing,
did.
we,
Yeah,
yeah,
we
we've,
did that.
we've kind of done that, house to achievement, I'm like trying to.
I'm like, I know, I think the
Do
next
not
one
call
is
it,
short.
follow that.
Do not make your calls without doing it in a TCPA friendly way, please.
I engage every conversation in the spirit of contribution, and people are happy to be in a relationship with me. Practice, reputation, you want them to want to work.
That's one of my favorite affirmations, because it's like, it fills you back up too. Okay. We gotta get to the next one. Is it else?
Man, and connect.
Uh-huh, that is there, okay.
Negotiate offers, which we've kind of
Oh, wait, that's.
merged that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think that's
I think this goes deeper into negotiation. After your
I
offer
think
is
that's all we got.
accepted or transferred. Is that really it? Like, that 17 and 18.
Well, we didn't go through 18, but like on this slide. that's what we-
Oh, okay.
And it is 7. Do you guys have any questions? What, do you have until 7:30?
Sweet, okay. So, 18. Oh, well, that was easy. That was easy button. Perfect,
See how much we've covered.
okay. Maybe we got this, okay.
What is
Okay.
negotiation? 3 keys of negotiation, negotiation tips, recap and pause, and daily step system.
Negotiating is not something to be avoided or feared, it's an everyday part of life. So, I mean, honestly, we all can.
We
Understand
negotiate
this.
everything in life.
Yeah.
With our toddlers,
All the
with our
time.
husband.
You negotiate in traffic.
I'm getting really good at negotiating with my son. He's 3. He's like 5 more minutes, mom. I'm like, no, 2. And then now he's flipped onto it and he's like 4 minutes. I'm like 3.5. It's so cute. It's so fun. Anyway, negotiating is a part of life with everything. Passive negotiation. There's 2 options. Submit your offer, you're accepted, you go to closing. As we've covered, there's obviously a lot more in between. And then the other option is you are rejected or countered, you negotiate. Oh, yeah. Who you negotiate with, your client. Because you can make that initial call and find out exactly what those sellers need. Then you go back to your buyers and say, hey, this is what I've dug up. The sellers need to close by this date. This is the price they're looking for, and they want to take the fridge with them. So then you negotiate with your buyer, and the buyer's like, hey, I can't buy a fridge if we're buying a house. You kind of have to negotiate with them and then communicate that back to the listing agent.
So, yeah, you negotiate with both your clients and the agents on the other side. In turn, that is negotiate with the seller. That, I like how they're very common points of negotiation, there's 2. Price, usually the primary factor and is related to the cost of the property. You'll find a lot of your conversations with sellers agents is very, very similar and repetitive. If you get rejected, usually the sellers were netted more money. That is most often what I hear back. That doesn't necessarily mean that they picked the highest offer. It means that the offer they picked is probably netting them more money than your offer, but because there's different ways to look, well, netting is netting, but there's different ways to write your offer. Yeah, so that so then the second thing is terms. So either financial, time-based, or both. So when they say terms and financial, they're not talking about price, they're talking about those other factors like earnest money, down payment,
And time-based could be a financial thing too. If you're pushing it past the 15th, your sellers need to make another payment.
Yeah.
So that's something else to keep in mind
so
too.
they're not incentivized to close later. They're more incentivized to close earlier. So it's just, yeah, that's a point of thought when it comes to writing your terms.
And y'all have a question? We're kind of speeding through it. We've touched base on a lot of this so far.
Oh, yeah. We're gonna go over the 3 Ps of writing an offer, of negotiation. So this first one is, it's a little bit. This very first one is about negotiating with your client. So preparation is key to building confidence and ensuring a smooth negotiation process. So you prepare and you prepare yourself and you prepare your clients as best as you can. The second is present, so move into the negotiation process by presenting the offer. And then the third is position, both parties closer until you have a full agreement. Details, this one's the funky one. Notes. I should have pulled up earlier. What is the next one? I feel like it goes into it. Prepare, there it is. Okay, so the first steps to prepare is to know your goal, and the goal is win-win, correct, for everybody, win-win or no deal. Second piece of preparing is knowing your client. So this goes into, I would highly advise you take any disc courses that come up, any, this is, yeah. All of the courses that are related to personality that you can get your hands on, go for it. It'll open your mind and it'll be a lot easier for you to understand your clients and how to communicate with them effectively and negotiate with them effectively to help them cross thresholds and overcoming issues or fears in order to get them back.
And this isn't directly related to their personalities, but sometimes if you need to spin the tables on them to explain something from a different perspective, like, hey, the sellers, this is how they're looking at it. Obviously, I'm representing you, but this is how they look at it, and explaining it that way, they can be like, yeah, oh, I guess that does make sense.
So then, thinking ahead. So I really like to role play out situations with my buyers, honestly. If I see, like, for instance, so I keep going back to that one where I told them no. The reality is if we were going to promise that we weren't going to ask for any repairs, we need to follow through on that. We can't renege on that and say that we're now going to ask for repairs because they're required by appraisal. So I had to think ahead with my clients and let my clients know, if the appraisal comes back and says we need this, this, and this fixed, you have to have those funds upfront to have a professional fix it. Because the lender is going to want to see receipts for what was done. So that's very important to think ahead and make sure that you're prepping your clients as well. And then the fourth is set clear expectations. So this all goes back to, we've covered it all, prep your clients, make sure that they know exactly what to expect for what's going to happen. And be informed. So if you don't know, it's never a problem to say, you know what, I'm not sure about that, let me get back to you.
And then
find
make
out.
sure that you get back to them.
Yes, absolutely.
Because you gotta remember, if you're working with multiple clients, they don't know that. And that's all they're thinking about is, oh, I'm waiting on this answer, I'm waiting on this answer. So they're gonna be frustrating and waiting and you don't want to forget.
You know, set a reminder in your phone to follow back up if you need to, like an alarm or an alert or
And
something.
something for me, I do a daily download. I make sure that I went through all of my transactions, I went through all of my texts, make sure there's no follow-up. And if it's anything that I can't do that night, I put a reminder in my calendar for the next morning when I get into the office. Because sometimes after 5, like, you can't make any progress with something, but I make sure that I put a reminder so that even though I'm delayed on getting back to them, at least I am getting.
6, obey the laws. This is pretty obvious. 'Cause nobody wants to get sued and nobody wants to go to jail. So just obey the laws. That's part of what real estate school is for, is to teach you how not to get sued and now not to go to jail. And some of the terms related to the contract. And know the documents inside and out. So again, that is your responsibility. You need to know the contract. If you're just reading through it and you have questions, you say, I don't know what this means. Don't be afraid to ask somebody. Like, even when we're in here and you're like, hey, I was looking at this, what does it mean? Like, everybody will be absolutely happy. Love. Yes, yeah, exactly.
Can I make one little just like comment? So on the know your client, and you said that you had the one client where you were like, you're not gonna buy this house. It's a fine line, you guys. So make sure that when you know the client and they're telling you one thing, it's a fine line between you guiding them too much in one direction, because at the end of the day, ultimately, it's their decision. They're purchasing the home. So as long as you're clear with, hey, one of the things I know was important to you is that you wanted to be able to move in quickly. And you've mentioned multiple times, you don't have a lot of money set aside for repairs. Just from our initial walkthrough of the house, there's some things that I would be really concerned that, and we may want an inspector to look at it before we even go under contract, such as the roof, or, I mean, we've walked into houses before where there's literally like a hole in the ceiling. And people will be like, well, won't be that hard of a fix. Well, what caused that whole though probably
Yeah.
will be a pretty good fix.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like just for bringing them back to what their needs were.
Yes.
And then also like sometimes just saying like, hey, I know that you're saying this is not that big of a project, but what I'm hearing your wife say is that she wants to be able to move in. So is this a good fit? Because you guys, there's gonna be another house. Right? So it's just making
Oh,
sure
yeah.
it's a fine line, like don't steer them because if you're the reason they don't put in an offer and they always see that as the one that got away, that's gonna be frustrating to them too. So
Well,
just
and
keep that
that's-
in mind. It's a fine line
Yeah.
of your job is to help negotiate the sale of the property, walk them through a property. You're not the expert. So
Yeah.
if you see a hole in the ceiling, you could probably say something like, gosh, that appears to be a very large hole that probably my guess would be is caused by a roof leak. We would definitely want to have that checked out. Is that the kind of repair that you're expecting? Right?
Yes.
But just
Mhm.
not overestimating or underestimating what people can
Yeah.
do. Just a
Like-
fine line.
I let that one go way too far. We were getting into the weeds of what we thought the repairs would cost on every little thing that we saw. And
And
then
at that point, you're like, client that would do this, you're like, well, it's too small, but I could knock out that back wall and I could add in this and I could extend the roof line. And I was like, at the end of the day, you have $4,000 in your bank account for earnest money repairs, appraisal and closing costs.
Yeah.
Ooh, something tells me that knocking out the wall and extension of the roof line is probably not gonna work. So this is not the house. Let's go.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And like.
You don't gotta stand here for an hour talking about it. Let's go. You know, don't, if they walk in and they're like, oh, no, this is not the one, I'm like, let's go. Sometimes we will be like, yeah, no, I wanna see the basement. Is there anything in the basement that's gonna change how you feel about the kitchen? There's not, then there's no reason for us to look at the basement. There's really not.
And don't be
You
afraid
guys
to point
remember,
that out.
don't be afraid to point that out.
Yeah.
You told me you did not want a kitchen like this. This is the kitchen. Is there anything else we're gonna see in the rest of the house that's gonna make you overlook this kitchen? There's not, then we don't need to see the rest of the house, you guys.
And this
You
kind of goes into, don't be afraid to point things out that they're not seeing. They might be
Yes.
in the living room, picking out how their couch is gonna go and there's no window or something, I don't know.
Yeah.
A big water spot on the wall, they're not gonna notice that because that's not what their eyes are trained for, like,
Mhm.
the more experience you get, the more you're gonna see things like that. Don't be afraid to point that out because at the inspection, it's gonna be called out. And if you know that's gonna be an issue, why waste your client's money on an inspection when the big
That
hole,
they've already said
Yeah.
that they can't
afford it.
they can't afford it.
So don't waste your time writing the offer, don't waste their emotions on writing an offer and getting your contract on the home.
Don't
I
waste the sellers. time.
Yeah.
I would be very careful with using the waste your time or waste time.
Yes,
With.
not with
them.
them, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a waste of time. Don't say that to me.
Never. Yeah, this, that goes into like knowing your clients, like I have clients too, we make jokes about my husband driving. But like, there's some.
So then
I
you joke about
that joke in front with a lot of other clients. That she gets in the tub in every house and I'm like, no, she can't drown you in that one, you have to look down. Yeah,
Know your clients.
yeah,
for sure, yeah, and have fun.
yes.
As purposeful questions provide you with points that you will negotiate on, provide insights on where you and your client have leverage, set clear expectations, allow you to get to know your client and their goal. And that's where the buyer consultations up front, like, why are you buying a home? What is your timeline? And then you can, like Rusty said, you can circle it back, like, hey, you only have $4,000, like, how are you gonna do this repair? You're able to circle back when you know that what their goal is at the beginning. Helps you learn what makes it a win-win negotiation for both parties.
Which is very important. If you know it's important to both parties, it helps you negotiate the in between to make sure that everybody's still getting their needs met as much as possible. You know, create that.
Open versus closed questions. Does anyone know what those are?
This is something I personally struggle with a lot. I like to get straight to the point when I've got a question. I want to know yes or no, or what exactly is happening. So this is something I really struggle with myself. That's why my favorite question when I'm talking to a seller's agent is, what is important to your client, or what is your client looking for in an offer? That's what should I say. What is your client looking for in an offer? Because usually that leaves it wide open. They can tell me everything that their client is looking for, and I get all the information straight out the gate. I used to ask timeline. I used to go drill down into the nitty gritty, and then it was a very long conversation, and they would give me like one word answers. And it's just, I don't know. It's a lot easier if I ask an open-ended question.
Ask the open-ended question and then wait. It's okay to have an awkward pause and awkward silence, because then they feel obligated to tell you everything.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun when you do take the classes, like the negotiating classes that are like the office offers. offers. It's fun to actually put those to play and kind of play with it too and ask the certain questions and then just pause and wait and see what happens. It's
Kind of neat when you go up against an agent and you're both like, and then you can make it happen. I don't know.
What is the book that we just read with the ALC, the red or the yellow? That one was really good. Never Split the Difference.
Never split the difference. I was like, what
You
was it?
should read or listen to that book. That was a really good one. And I have taken a lot of those and tried to negotiate. It was way funny. The first agent that I tried some communication with. Even though I was just- and it was really awkward because I was no pro on it. So yeah, roll it.
So, okay, so yeah, so like, oh, we're looking for a 30-day close. Okay, is there something happening related to that time frame? Like I said, oh, are they moving into another house?
My favorite
or-
question is, where's the seller going?
Yes.
And then they usually open it up to you and they'll tell you the timeline and anything else.
And honestly, anything they tell you, you're free to tell your client. And then how do you feel about that? So that's really important for your client and asking your client, how do you feel about that? Are you comfortable with this? Like well, that's a question. See, I struggle. But yeah.
Do you
close-ended
know the
questions.
difference between open and closed?
Now, close-ended questions are handy because you can use them as part of the negotiating process with your buyer or your seller. If you've got somebody that's kind of wishy-washy and if you can ask them yes or no questions, that's gonna get them to the conclusion that, not that necessarily that you need, but that will get you to a conclusion. That's a perfect opportunity for us. Okay. So I like these what's in my questions. So these are questions that I usually ask myself, but also the way that you would ask your client is, what would happen if, for instance, what would happen if the appraisal came back and it was low? Because I know you want to offer all of this over and you're happy to pay that, but the loan is only going to cover what up to the appraisal. That's it. So what happens if the appraisal goes over? There's a chance that the seller isn't going to want to negotiate or accept a lower offer. Like do we have funds to, sub in, or are you comfortable letting them go at that point? So those are really good questions for what would happen if. And then why is this important to you? So yeah, it helps you gain more information and gain more insights into what their mindset is and what, again, it helps you get.
The other thing about asking these types of questions is when you get down to it and you're $2,000 between the buyer and seller, like, really, what is $2,000 on payment? Like, yeah, just make it happen if it is only 2,000, and that's when you can circle back to your buyer consultation and say, hey, these are the things you wanted, this one has all of these. Are you really gonna lose over?
Stretched over 30 years, that's,
Yeah.
Candace knows all the numbers.
Take action scenario, so instructions, work with a partner, read the scenario, list clarifying questions to ask your client, apply your new knowledge of open and closed. So role playing.
We're not gonna do role playing. Okay. Okay. Oh, we've been through a lot of this already. Yeah, best practices when presenting. So like I said, call the other agent. Pay attention to nonverbal cues like pauses and voice qualities. And that's one of those things, like, say you're calling on a house that fell out of contract, always ask what happened on the previous contract. It is not impertinent, it is not rude, it is entirely relevant, because it's possible that it's something that your client may also not like. Or it's something that maybe the sellers, you can overcome with your client, or the sellers can help your client overcome. So just, yeah, don't be afraid to ask what happened. You can often tell there's the little laugh chuckle of exasperation. They've been rounds in this specific issue, and that they probably have worked on resolving it. There's situations, usually when I hear that, I'm like, oh, their seller doesn't want to fix that. You can tell, even if they're not going to tell you that straight out the gate, so just really pay attention to voice qualities and those local cues, nonverbal cues. Usually it's over the phone, so that's why it's you get to know. And then this is our favorite one. We've talked about it a lot. Keep quiet once you present an offer. So this is what when we're talking about presenting an offer, we're not talking about necessarily your offer, it's your position in the negotiation. So once you present your offer, hey Kaylee, my clients can't come up to that price point, but they can meet you in the middle, meet your sellers in the middle at this price point. How does that sound? Or does that sound fair?
You do use the word fair too. And it kind of ropes them into like, oh, is that fair? And then they start thinking about it too. And then I would say, well, let me get back to you. I'm gonna talk to my fellow and see what we can do.
But if that's one of those situations where does that sound fair? Stop talking, let them think about it, let the words work on them. In negotiation, the person who speaks first loses.
If you ever talk to someone that lied about where they were or just lied in general, they'll keep talking. And so it's kind of interesting to see how negotiations work. If you wait, you aren't spilling the beans on everything your clients do. You're not throwing out the cards for everything. So pausing and waiting, even though it's awkward, get good at it.
As agents, we're so uncomfortable with silence. We do not have to fill every space with talking. We really don't. In our consultations, we talk far too much.
Yep.
In our negotiations, we talk far too much. It's okay to just sit in it for a minute. Is that fair?
That's usually the time at which that works very best. Does that sound fair?
Does that sound fair?
And then just, you shut up, person who talks first loses in that situation. So,
The other thing that kind of made me think of this of keep quiet, when you're showing homes, you don't know what your clients are okay with living wise. It could be completely different than what your living situation is. For example, like I've been through properties where I'm like, oh my gosh, you need to go shower right after this, and they're in love with it, and it's way better than their current circumstances, and they're okay with the condition. But if I go in and I'm like, oh my gosh, it smells like turkey, and I hate this house, like they're gonna be like, oh, why did she get this house? Like this is so much cleaner than our house, or whatever. Like you get to know your clients and know what they think before you speak.
but
So,
also,
right.
if you smell something, say something's okay.
Yes.
Don't do it in front of cameras, don't do it disparagingly, but say, I do think there's an ounce. Or, my favorite is, it smells a little green in here.
That's funny. I've never used that.
Yeah. And they usually laugh and you
Yes.
get a little bit of a
plants in the house.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's everybody laughs. We want to bring in here.
Stay home and relax. In general, like we are the buffer as their agent, like if shit hit the fan with the lender, like take a moment and pause and let you calm down before you call your client and have an answer of fixing it before you like, oh my gosh, this happened and this happened, because then you're gonna cause more stress for them. We're the buffer.
I had a lender just recently, when she called me to tell me about a problem, on the voicemail she left me, she goes, oh, I think I'm gonna cry.
You're like, that's not.
Don't contact the other, she's on the other side, she was on the better side. I'm like, we're working together, honey, but it's okay. Oh my God. But like, you don't want to project your feelings onto your client. And also you don't want to project your feelings onto the seller or the buyer's agent. Like, if you need to take a minute, come up with some solutions, think ahead, like.
Even if that solution is going to your husband and then.
Yeah, sometimes if you
Yeah.
need to vent to somebody that's outside of the situation that isn't gonna spill the beans.
Phone a friend,
Yep,
call someone in this room.
yeah. If you don't know what to do, call somebody else, because there's a chance they might have, but
It's the funnest thing, when she
Yeah.
first got in, she's like, Kaylee, what do I do about this and this and this? And I'm like, you do this. Oh,
even
That's how
after
you
it's like
handle
a
it?
year and a half in,
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh my God, Taylor, what are we gonna do? She's like, just ask for some concessions. Oh,
that was the most recent one, yeah.
I forgot I could do that. My brain is in panic mode. So like sometimes before you take anything to your clients, if you need to chat out a solution with another agent, just call another agent and chat it out.
It's not your job to meet your client emotion for emotion.
No.
That is not your job. Your job is to help them with the best solution. And there are sometimes the solution is not good news. There are sometimes it is not going to work. But if your hair is on fire or your lender's hair is on fire and everybody's running around matching the same emotions, you're doing a huge disservice to your client.
Well, and a lot of times, if you keep calm, you have the opportunity to be the savior. Like in that particular situation, it was the documents were coming from Alabama and the notary ink in Alabama is black. So she insisted that my client sent her on the unnotarized versions. And I was like, no, I was like, okay, hold on. And I asked my client, I was like, are you sure you sent her the notarized version? She's like, yeah, the version, I have they've got Xerox lines on them. I'm like, okay. So then I'm like, then I get a text message from the lender. It's like, oh, they're purple. They should be purple. I'm like, you've got the right version. So then I had to look it up, and instead of the lender and the underwriter in this situation looking up what's legal in Alabama, they both panicked and nearly blew up the deal. I'm like, give it a go. That's
Give it a go.
That's
That's my favorite. Give it a go.
give it a go. I looked it up. Alabama notary ink requirements. Slap. Fix the problem. They just Googled it. They would not have panicked everybody. Sorry, just
Stay calm and
yeah,
relax.
stay calm, say, how can we fix this? And at the end of the day, in that particular situation, the worst case scenario, we close 2 days later. That's the reality of the situation a lot of times. We close a little bit later. That's not that big of a deal in most cases.
I just had a recent situation, literally just closed this last week, and every single road bump that the agent ran into, she called me hysterical and panic. I finally got to the point on the one call, I said, hey, you know what? I'm gonna give you a minute. I want you to go back and think this through. And then let's reconnect later this afternoon. And I got off the phone with her, and instead of even calling her back, I called the lender directly, because the lender was the one that had a level head and had solutions. And she said, oh man, I wish she wouldn't have called you yet, because I already told her I had not just one backup, I have 2 other backups, and all of them are very viable. We just need a couple of hours to figure out which one's gonna make the most sense. Great. So if the agent, number one, she's calling me with her head flying off. If my head starts to fly off and then I'm calling my seller, her buyer's already been up crying all night for a solution that was easy. It was an easy fix. We had it solved less than 24 hours later. So just think that through. You do not want to be the person on the other line that when someone sees your name, they go, oh gosh, this is going to be a 3-minute conversation and it's going to be useless. So just keep that in mind, like stay calm, stay relaxed, think, be solution focused.
Oh, yeah.
If your lender or your buyer or your seller or whatever is telling you they're working through some things, help with the solution. Don't panic and panic the other
Yeah.
side of the transaction either until you have some solutions.
I'll be honest, I was in the middle of getting ready. I was in the shower when I got that phone call. She left me that voicemail. And I waited until I'd gotten ready and responded to a couple other text messages and everything before I got back to her, because she set me off. And I was like, now I'm panicking and I'm pissed and slamming my phone down. And I'm like, I'm like, okay, there's gonna be a solution to this. Like, you know, take the time if you need, if you can, if you need it. Stay calm and relaxed.
Focus on the customer's needs again,
Yes.
like what Rusty said, like, make sure that you're not panicking.
I know.
Okay.
I want to point something out here. Sorry. There's a difference between customer and client. So everybody know what the difference is? Customer and client.
A customer is somebody who you are literally working with, or is it the client?
The client is who you have fiduciary responsibility to.
Okay,
The
the
customer is
customer
somebody
is-
that you don't. So in this case, like customer would be the other side of the transaction. I don't think it's very clear in here, folks, on the customer's needs, but often if you focus on what is gonna work for the seller and what is gonna work for the buyer and make those things match or meet in the middle or compromise, you can resolve. But that's just something I want to point out, because there's a difference between a customer and a client. Yeah. And then give your offer the best chance. So this is when you're presenting it. Oh, I don't have our emails. Oh, so like we talked about, when you're presenting your offer, make a phone call, send over an email that is very concise to the point, but also gives them all the information that they're gonna need. And there's a lot of other ways to give your offer the best chance. So we've talked about how to communicate with the listing agent. You know, you really want to be on their best side. So if they can't get back to you within an hour, like, do not keep calling them. That will frustrate somebody. Like, that is not doing your clients any kind of service. Harassing the other side is not going to solve the problem ever. So that you want to represent your clients as best as possible. So, and giving your offer the best chance is part of that. Yeah. And then position. Okay. So acknowledge and affirm common ground. So in our particular situation, we didn't go into having new common ground. Okay. Our timelines work. So, okay, so all the timelines work great, Kaylee. Like, so this is a situation earlier where I was like, we can meet in the middle on price. And I said, does that sound fair? You know, if there's still some back and forth, say, look, we've come to this agreement on this and this point. That's really great. I don't want to blow stuff over that. Let's see if we can make some common ground. Ask what and how questions.
No,
So,
yes.
yes, exactly. So,
How do we make this go?
yes,
How do we meet in the middle?
or
What can we do?
what can we do to make this work for your sellers? So we understand that price is very important to them. Is there any other way that we can compensate? Know that positioning is a process. So that means like you're not, what you send out in your offer is not necessarily going to be the end decision of the contract. But let your clients know that, like what you send out on the offer, that may change. It's the process. And then know when to walk away. So we've had a little bit of conversation about this, but there's a point in time where if the deal's not going to work for the seller and the buyer, the deal's not going to work for the seller and the buyer, and no amount of banging your head against the wall with the other agent is going to solve the problem. I had a situation where I had a buyer walk away from a house that had been listed for a long time. It was right when the market shifted last year. And I was doing everything I could to keep this buyer because my clients were under contract on this perfect house for the second time because we've had a whole bunch of roller coaster happening. And I was to the point where I was ready to throw my commission in to make it happen. And this gal still said no. I wish I hadn't done that. It was kind of embarrassing, but I was like, please do not ruin this for my poor people. But there's a point at which you can't fix the problem. You can't win them over, and you just need to acknowledge that it's time to walk away. Okay, more scenarios.
If you're saying partner, read the scenario, do the role play. Kind of like some role playing. Any other?
We went over all the negotiating things
Mhm.
when we're writing the offer, because that's when we usually do most of it, yeah. I'm like, okay, negotiation tips. Okay, I feel like this second one is just a series of tips.
Yeah. So be professional, we've already talked about that. I don't know if it's unprofessional, but I send a lot of emojis and gifts and stuff, but I also know how to mirror and match. If I'm not getting emojis back and gifts back, I'm not gonna keep sending them because that's not professional in that agent's eyes. But like to Rusty, I can send them to her and she's not gonna think,
And she's gonna get the
yeah, exactly.
Mickey kissy back with the thank you from me.
It's really fun. You gotta have fun when you do it.
I have said that sometimes, we're like, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to send that. Someone else, sorry.
So I
meant
can always
this.
ask people if they are okay with the.
I wouldn't even ask.
I
You're
wouldn't
gonna be able to
ask.
tell based
It's
on
just
your
like-
conversation.
Yeah, if you
Yeah.
call someone and they're being really short with you, don't try to carry on a conversation. Just mirror and match. So same thing with text. I'll put a couple emojis in. If I'm not putting anything back, like it'll be like one here or there. So it's still me, but I've toned it down a little. Yeah, just like I swear like a sailor, but I'm obviously not gonna swear if my clients are not swearing. I let them kind of, I hang out with them, see where they're at, and if they're dropping the F-bombs, so am I. But in a professional manner,
Yes.
like when it's applicable.
It's the same as if you're texting someone and they're calling you every time they get
Yeah.
a text, they don't want to be communicated with via text. They want to have a phone call. If you're calling and they're texting back, they want to text with you. If Kaylee calls me, I know it is something like critical because
Yeah.
she texts me 95% of the time.
Mm.
So mirror and match your clients in all forms of communication and the other agent.
And we actually just implemented this. We put together a Google form to get to know our clients more because we want to know them on another level. And so when we get off of our initial call, we send them a text, hey, we just sent you a calendar invite for our next meeting. In the meantime, we fill out this little questionnaire and we ask them like, what's your preferred communication? Text, calling, and I even had one, they're like in person. So now I know for the next event, I'm gonna show up to her doorstep with an invitation in hand. Because that's setting it apart and communicating in her style. And she's a little older, so knowing your clientele is really important. Oh, yeah. We got into the weeds, we keep doing that.
No, well, for being professional, there's a lot of things related to it because
Yes.
it crosses clients and the way you represent yourself to other agents, which will definitely affect how.
And closing.
Yes, so like, I'll be honest, I used to get super hung up. I would not dare wear in my real estate capacity pants with holes.
Yeah.
But Kaylee's made me firm.
I'm super casual, but it's because like my clientele are friends and family and then referrals with them. So I don't have to go out and like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
But you have to manage your
Definitely well before. Wow. Dress
I dress,
more quick.
I dress business casual for my first time that I meet my clients, see how they're dressed.
Yeah.
And then you always want to be a slight step ahead of your clients in the way that you dress, so just keep that in mind. But that's part of being professional with your clients. So being professional with other agents, that's communicating back as quickly as you can within a reasonable time frame. Do not, like I said, spam call them over and over and over again, trying to get an
Even
answer.
if you're in a meeting, like just say, hey, I'm in a meeting, I'll get back to you soon, so that they at least know that, hey, you're on my radar, I'm gonna get back to you.
Yep.
What were you gonna say, Ruthie?
I was just gonna say, I always think when we're talking about clothing and the way you're gonna dress, I agree. You're kind of mirroring, matching your client that way too. I always think to myself, if the seller sees me on a Ring doorbell, if I'm representing a buyer, are they gonna wonder which one's the agent, which one's the client?
Yeah.
I don't ever want that to be the question, right? So I agree. I know the clients I can be super casual with. I know the clients I need to get super dressed up for. And I also am representing myself when I'm walking into someone else's home, if you're showing the property. So I always think like, if I'm buzzing the Ring doorbell, I don't want them to be like, is that the client or is that the agent? I want it to be clear set apart.
And that goes along to the same way that you're representing yourself and your clients in a home, because everybody's got cameras.
Everyone has,
like,
just expect that
mean,
you are
yeah.
on video.
Like, I mean, like Haley said,
Happy birthday.
language, but
You guys have-
Where are you going to dinner?
Tona.
Get the baking bubble gum.
I had that.
It's-
What is it?
I don't know, something weird, I don't even know what it is, but it tastes delicious. Baking bubble gum.
Okay. Enjoy.
You should take me
I
that.
will.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
all right, keep your goal in mind, as we said multiple times, and your client's goals and seller's goals. Pay attention to your communication and tone with anyone involved in the transaction, so that goes ahead with being calm and keeping a level head. Like I said, if somebody on the other side gives that little chuckle side thing, you're giving away a lot. You could give away a lot, so just be aware of how you're communicating. Continually refer to your client's motivation of speaking with them. So that goes back to speaking with your client. So, okay, this is what you said you wanted, this is what you said you need, this house needs those things, or this house doesn't need those. Don't reveal too much, listen more than talk, and keep your client's motivation close to your chest. So that's when you're talking to other agents. So part of fiduciary duty is confidentiality and disclosure. So disclosure can go both ways. You don't want to disclose too much, and you want to make sure that you're disclosing everything possible to your clients. For instance, if the listing agent tells you something about the house that is going to be a deal breaker for your clients, but you don't want this to deal, that's wrong not to tell them. You still need to tell your clients. You need to tell your clients everything possible about the home.
And that leads into the next thing, don't be attached to the outcome. Don't have commission, Brad, look out for your client who has interest. Treat them like you want to be treated. If a house doesn't work for you, you don't want someone to be pushing you and be like, you need to buy this house, you need to buy this house. It sucks when you lose a commission or a potential commission.
I'll share a situation that I had related to this. I'll be as quick as possible. I let another agent get me feeling like we absolutely had, it was a new bill. I let the other agent give me a time frame that made me feel like we were going to lose the house for my clients if we didn't give the earnest money right that day. And so I don't know, I can't remember exactly if I pressured her or not, but now looking back, I feel like I pressured my client to give over the earnest money check when she still had reservations. Because I thought, we're gonna lose the house if you don't give them this money right now. And you want this house, you want this area. And we ended up losing that earnest money later on because this agent was also kind of a liar. So I let myself get too into the emotions that this other agent was putting on us as a sales tactic. It actually turned out that agent, because I looked him up because I was so pissed off after everything went down the way it did, that turns out he's a used car salesman and he's not on the MLS. He's just a sales agent for a home builder. And that's the high pressure sales tactic that he used on me in order to get my clients to have. So that's one of my biggest regrets. I'm still very good friends with those clients. They're very sweet, but it eats me up sometimes when I see them and I'm like, oh, I believe I lost your money. That was my fault. So yeah, don't be attached to the outcome. Don't let somebody else get in your head in that way that makes you act in a way that isn't in your client's best interest.
We made it.
Wow.
Only a few minutes late,
Woo!
8 minutes late. Not too bad. Yeah. Any other questions? Anything?
Thank you. You guys are wonderful.
Thank you guys. Yeah.
Aren't these ladies the best? Oh, you get some good info today.
I don't think I clicked the right thing.
That's okay, just stop sharing now, just.
It's coming from that direction? Listen, I'm extra.